OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Very good morning to you, 7:30 this Tuesday, Wednesday. What day of the week is it on?
I have no idea.
Wednesday morning here on OTB AM. You're very welcome along. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. We've a very, very busy show for you. We have LGFA, we have boxing, we have football, and we have loads more besides. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the Italian Big Sam and how all of a sudden he was a failure at Everton anyway and they never really wanted him? Is that where we're starting? It was an average season. It was mediocre stuff from Everton is what I'm reading in the papers today. And that's not how I remember last season being framed at all when we were in the midst of it.
No, absolutely not. I thought it was a good season for Everton. I think that a lot of the credit for the good season was being given to Ancelotti and being given to James Rodriguez, whose very existence at the club. The credit for that was being given to Ancelotti as well. So all of this was kind of wrapped up in their manager. Of course, there are plenty of green shoots there for them to build on next season, but Ancelotti going is a massive piece of the jigsaw that's going to be absent immediately for Everton next season, especially when you think about some of the replacements that might come in. He is one of the best managers around, and I think
is he?
Well, I think
is he? Come on!
I think it's evidenced by the fact that Real Madrid. I think it's evidenced by the fact that Real Madrid have gone out and got him.
Well, I mean,
wanted him.
Florentino Perez makes a bad decision. How is that necessarily evidence of anything? Where's evidence for that, baby?
Well, I think you look at the managers that you can have some sort of attraction to as a president of a football club. You've got to be a little bit good at the very least. I think you've got to be, like in the case of Real Madrid, very good to get a call back and to be reunited with the club again. Like I would have thought that Ancelotti is an excellent manager. I think that there is this theory out there that Ancelotti had these amazing players and he didn't win as many Champions League medals as he should have done, and if it wasn't for those amazing players he wouldn't have been a great manager at any point, and he wouldn't have this sort of reputation as one of Europe's best.
His Champions League record is sensational and it stands comparison with anybody, but he was in charge of some of the greatest collections of teams ever. Like, so, do you know, would you rather have Ancelotti or Guardiola?
Well, Guardiola. Right. So what Florentino Perez picks up the phone to Pep Guardiola, is that what you're suggesting? And no,
I'm just saying, like, so he's not at that level. Would you rather have, I mean, obviously Tuchel is much higher rated at the moment. Give me a mid-tier.
Pochettino is the
yeah, would you rather have Ancelotti or Pochettino?
Well, that's a reasonable question. Personally, I would have Pochettino.
Yeah, me too. So why?
Because Ancelotti's won things. And he's got the job done. That's all Real Madrid want right now, is to win things. And under Ancelotti, they feel they can do it. Under Zidane, that's what they did in the first spell. Under Zidane, the 3 Champions Leagues in a row. Like, you could say about Zidane the exact same thing that you just said about Carlo Ancelotti, the greatest collection of players available. Sometimes that is the gig with Real Madrid. Well, how well can you manage a team of amazing talents?
I don't think Zidane did have the best collection of players around that time. Zidane...
He had the number 2 player in the world and the number 3 player in the world. Like, I mean, if you don't have Messi, at least you've got Ronaldo and Gareth Bale. Bale when he was absolutely at his peak.
Well, Bale was only a sub in a couple of the finals that he won because his
which he won levels. For the team.
But Zidane's team was not a league-winning team. It wasn't one of those great European sides like the Ajax team, like the Bayern team, like the Milan team. It wasn't absolutely dominating the whole way through. And what Zidane was able to do was to win that competition, and I think Zidane probably gets less credit than he deserves for that. And I would definitely rather have Zidane in Madrid, where there is that kind of weird psychic element to the fact that he is a club legend, than Ancelotti. I just think Ancelotti's reputation at this stage, Ancelotti's reputation should be based on he took that Everton team to 10th. Which made him, you know, a run-of-the-mill Premier League manager last season, despite the fact that he had the ability to entice some very famous players who may or may not be at their peak, or maybe well past their peak in some cases. Like, I think it's mad that Ancelotti is getting the Madrid gig, and I think that in the long run for Everton, if they find the right manager next, this is a chance for them to build. Like, David Moyes did a much better job last season than Carlo Ancelotti did. But people would be like, well, David Moyes, I mean, look at that. He's already failed about 7 times. And there's no way that Moyes is going to get the credit that, in the long run, that Ancelotti gets. Like, you know, would you rather, if you're if you were managing random club, which of those two would you rather manage them right now?
Oh, like, I mean, if the random club happens to be in Spain, it's going to be Carlo Ancelotti. If it's a random Premier League club, I think David Moyes is a better manager.
So that's the level that Ancelotti's at then, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good shout actually. That David Moyes has kind of been the manager that you could point to and say, there's a guy who overachieved with his bunch of players during the season, and Ancelotti didn't overachieve at all. Like,
would you rather have Brendan Rodgers or Ancelotti?
Well, Brendan Rodgers.
If for Real Madrid.
Yeah, it's interesting that Brendan Rodgers, if he was even linked to the job, there would have been a few eyebrows raised. I think that his success is very limited to the Premier League and to Britain at the moment. It does seem like I think that Brendan Rodgers probably is the type of guy who has the type of experience that would allow him to translate into a European league quite well, actually. I think he would do a really good job at one of those clubs around Europe, but I just don't feel he'll get that opportunity just yet. He's not going to go to a club outside of the top clubs in Europe because of the fact that there is a risk there, and if it does go south, then again you'll get painted like David Moyes as somebody who's an utter failure once they step outside of England, because there was just a sense that the English can't really impose their style onto the Spanish, for example. So yeah, there's definitely a bit of a reputation being put before anything else when it comes to Carlo Ancelotti, but that does not automatically mean that he is a bad pick as Real Madrid manager. Of course, he's not the best pick for the job. I do think though that the Pochettino comparison is an interesting one. That who Pochettino for me clearly is a better modern manager, but your CV does count for something, and the fact that you have won a lot of trophies does count for something. But it's hard to disagree with the point you make about Everton last season. It was pretty mediocre, to say the least. Despite early in the season looking like it might be a top four challenge.
And there were fits and starts, and there were specific games where if they had won, it felt like some kind of turning point would be reached. And every time you waited for that big victory that was going to be a gateway to a surge in form, it wasn't there. It just wasn't there. And I don't know.
And a good team, like a really good team. That in every line of their team you have players who you're like, yeah, they're not going to get outshone by their opposite number today. I know they had injuries throughout the season, but everybody had injuries throughout the season. And I guess maybe it does speak to something that Ancelotti is willing to jump ship at this point. Maybe this wasn't seen as a longer-term project. In fairness, it is Real Madrid.
Exactly. There's probably 5 or 6 clubs in the world that he would have jumped ship for, and Real Madrid, because that you can negotiate a big deal. They're in a bit of crisis. It's Real Madrid. There's going to be a payoff at the end of it. Happy days. Win-win. He said, very important for me and my family at this point in my career to make all this money, was the subtext. I do love Jamie Carragher just never missing a genuine opportunity to twist the knife. And so in his column, which is obviously syndicated in the Indo and the Herald this morning, he's suggesting that Rafa Benitez is the man that Everton need to take them forward.
Yeah, not sure about that, to be totally honest. It's from Benitez's perspective, that is, that the Liverpool heart that he has deep inside himself, I'm not sure whether it'll allow him to go to Everton. Steven Gerrard is another man who's been mentioned in connection to the Everton job. That would be quite something to see if that actually did materialise. I'm going back through the team, by the way, that Ancelotti brought to the Champions League, and in fairness, the 2014 Champions League before Zidane kind of took up the mantle and won the other two, and in fairness, that is more peak Bale, I would say. So my argument about Zidane having peak Bale, I would say Ancelotti had peaker Bale earlier in his career at Real Madrid. Benitez to Everton would make sense from Everton's perspective. I'm not sure it makes sense from Benitez's perspective. He has spoken glowingly about his time at Liverpool. He does seem to still love that football club.
Well, the Liverpool fans would forgive him, wouldn't they? The good question this morning to ask Liverpool fans: would you forgive Rafa Benitez for joining and turning Everton into a good side again? It can't be that he joins them and it's a flop, right? But so worst case scenario, things work out for Everton and Rafa Benitez makes them relevant, wins a couple of Merseyside derbies, knocks you out of a cup, qualifies for the Champions League at some point over the next 3 seasons. How do you feel about that? How do you like them apples, Liverpool fans, this morning? 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. But I don't know, I think Carlo Ancelotti,
they're just going back to the tried and trusted. That's what's happening here, is that Perez is like, right, Zidane is the guy who brought us our Champions League success and our trophy-winning success. It's the trophy that matters. Who is the next guy down? And it's like, oh, let's just go back to the guy who did it for us before. And there's a familiarity there. And
as Graham pointed out, you can't argue Florentino Perez's track record of success. Whatever weird situation he has built, whatever has happened there, despite the fact it looks like there's never a coherent plan, the plan always ends up with them winning the European Cup every 2 or 3 years. And maybe it's Carlo Ancelotti's turn to win the European Cup. But I don't know. I still think that so many of the amazing teams, so many of the brilliant sides in world football have been coached by him as another team snatches victory from the jaws of defeat. You think of Manchester United in Turin, you think of Liverpool in Istanbul. Carlo Ancelotti is standing on the sideline going, well, what can I do about it? You fix it. And it's like, well, yeah, you could try something, Carlo. You've got like that Juventus team had Deschamps, Zidane, Edgar Davids, and a bunch of amazing Italians. And that Milan side were 3-0 up half time.
What about 2007 then? Are we just saying that Milan reached their expectation in 2007, or are we just forgetting about the fact that Manchester United were cresting to one of their greatest ever teams? Barcelona were doing the exact same thing. Are we just saying that Milan in 07 doesn't count under Ancelotti, or what? It
doesn't count. But sorry, who's in the Milan team in 2007? Like when you're saying it's the best ever Man United team, I mean, is it?
Oh, it's a really good Milan team, but you need a really good squad to win the Champions League. Funnily enough, like it's Kaká, Inzaghi, Pirlo's in that team. You got Seedorf in that team. Gattuso's in there. It is the peak mid-noughties AC Milan team, the one that I guess does get humiliated in Istanbul, but does come back a couple of years later and wins the Champions League. The Champions League is a hard thing to win. We've seen it this season.
It is a hard thing to win.
We've seen it with Tuchel with Paris Saint-Germain and the great team he had. We saw it again this season with Paris Saint-Germain. We've seen it with Pep at Bayern Munich and with Manchester City. So this is a tough competition to win, and I think that the fact that like we're just suddenly looking at Carlo Ancelotti as somebody who's like, I'm getting a tone from you that he's underachieved. Like, what is it? Three Champions League?
He hasn't underachieved. It's the opposite. He's overrated. Like, he absolutely has not underachieved. I've never said that. I just think that he is overrated in terms of, and doesn't get any of the kind of because he's won 3 Champions Leagues. That ends all arguments. At that point, you're really fighting a sticky wicket when it's like, oh, this. But actually,
but that's why he's been appointed, you know.
Well, exactly, but not on the basis of the work that he's done at Everton, where he signed some very flash players. They had some big wins, but ultimately they finished 10th. Like, did Marcelo Bielsa, did Leeds finish ahead of them, or
I think Leeds were 9th, weren't they, at the end of the season? So, when it comes to the Everton form, it's really hard to make a case that guy on the evidence of the last season is the man who would step up and try and.
But I'm sorry, it's a goal difference behind Leeds United. My case is that that's who he is as manager. That and look, maybe every manager in the Premier League at AC Milan and at Real Madrid would have a very good chance with those squads of winning the Champions League, because ultimately maybe the players certainly in the past have mattered a good bit more than the managers have, and we see the difference that Thomas Tuchel made at Chelsea this season compared to Frank Lampard, which would lead you to suggest that there's a top core of managers and almost any of them are interchangeable when it comes to winning. I don't know. Carlo Ancelotti, he's getting away with a lot, I think. 7:44 this morning if you want to get in touch. OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're going to talk about Poland in our Euros cheat sheet today at 7:50. Jason Quigley is going to join us at 20 minutes past 8. We've got a news update at 35 minutes past 8. Armagh's Aimee Mackin at 8:45. We're going to talk about the Ring of Kerry cycle at 9 o'clock. Going back to Slovakia for the Euros, and then French Open with Colm Boohig at around about 20 past 9. Phil Egan is with us this morning. Phil, before we get into Ireland, what's your take on Carlo Ancelotti?
Really good manager, but maybe his best days are past him. And I think we saw that with Everton. 18 months there, season started pretty well, but they were dreadful towards the end of the season. And not even in terms of results, but just to watch, they were awful. I know it's a season during a pandemic and squads are stretched, but I watched a few Everton games. Everton-Brighton, it was at the Amex, is 90 minutes of my life that I'll never get back. It was absolutely woeful.
The clue to why you shouldn't have watched that game, Phil, was in the title, Everton versus Brighton.
No, I thought when we had no football for a few months, we were of the opinion that football is back. You got to cherish it and watch football at all opportunities.
And then a couple of weeks later, you realised
Brighton are going to watch.
Too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, towards the end of the season, I just found it so soulless. So having the fans back is almost like an injection of the passion that you get back for the game. And I'm actually really looking forward to the Euros.
Yeah, we just made that point yesterday in the show that it's going to be completely different to watch football. That's it'll reach the knockout stages pretty quick, and the final group stage, because so many teams are going through, there will be an element of jeopardy. And also then the fixture list for so many teams, particularly coming out of that England group, victory or defeat on the final day is going to decide who you're playing against, and they're all really good teams. So from the get-go, it should actually be pretty interesting. Let's talk about the Republic of Ireland and what we expect. All of a sudden, a friendly against Andorra is vital, and it really shouldn't be. It really shouldn't matter that much one way or another, but at the same time, there's only so many times you can say, look, it's a transitional period and we're building. You have to beat Andorra in football. That's one of the rules of football. You need to win against Andorra.
Yeah, absolutely. They're ranked 158th in the world, and regardless of how well or how bad the team is doing at the moment, like even if we've won every game under Stephen Kenny, this is a game that you just shouldn't have to think about. You win the game, and it's all about giving certain players a chance to show what they can do in an Ireland jersey, and you move on and you draw conclusions from what you learned from it. But yeah, there is that little bit of, I think we're going to beat Andorra. We will, won't we? I mean, they're going to park the bus and we'll break them down, and we'll come away from it thinking, yeah, he gave a few new caps. Remember, Stephen Kenny's already given out 13 new caps, so he's going to add to that tomorrow night, and hopefully we come away from it obviously talking about Stephen Kenny's first win, but also certain players that caught the eye.
Yeah, who do you hope he caps, and who do you hope catches the eye?
Well, looking at it, I was trying to patch a team together and what kind of starting 11 you'd go with. So I think obviously with the Hungary game in mind next week, and Hungary obviously are at the Euros, and they're going to really be treating the Ireland game next week as just that final preparation for the tournament. So I don't think Stephen Kenny is going to be as experimental with that game. He's going to almost treat it as this is maybe a chance to show what we've learned from the first 11 games, 12 by the time the game comes around. So tomorrow I expect more experimental. Plus, certain players need game time. Caoimhín Kelleher, I think, will probably get a start, because I think there was a fair chance he might have got a start in the first World Cup qualifier, regardless of what happened with the injuries with Darren Randolph, and obviously Mark Travers played, and we know Gavin Bazunu came in as well. And I think in the likes of Kelleher and Bazunu, the future is bright in terms of the goalkeeping position, and we've always tended to have good goalkeepers, so I'm not concerned in that situation. It's a big summer for Kelleher, because the reports at Liverpool is he's going to get a new contract. I would imagine Adrian moves on, and then does that mean that Kelleher is officially the Liverpool number 2? Alisson obviously picked up a few injuries during the season, and the biggest compliment you could pay to Kelleher was when Alisson was injured, there wasn't as much panic anymore, because Kelleher had impressed in the games that he came in, whereas Liverpool fans have an uneasiness when they knew that Adrian was going to play. And
was there any possibility that maybe the right thing for him to do is to go off and have a season on loan, and that Liverpool might look at it that way as well?
Possibly, and see what he's like. You can only learn how good a player is the more games they play. So he obviously did well for the few games that he played. He played 5 times for Liverpool in the first team. Obviously, he had Champions League, he had FA Cup, he had Premier League, and he did really well. But you want to see him over a full season, whether it's a Premier League team or the Championship, then Liverpool are obviously going to have to sign another goalkeeper. But Kelleher is somebody I would expect to start tomorrow. But then, like John Egan, would be one of the more senior players that has travelled out to the training camp. Obviously, didn't play the World Cup qualifiers because of injury, but he's a player you'd like to have in there. And then it gives you the option to play one of the younger lads beside him. So do you give Andrew Omobamidele a debut? He's only 18, but because you've got John Egan in beside him, that's a nice way to load him in. And is it going to be 3 at the back or 4? Probably 4, maybe the 4-3-3 we've seen Kenny use more regularly than the 3 at the back that we would have seen in the last round of games.
Okay, and who is in your midfield?
I think Josh Cullen. I think he's going to stay at the base of that midfield. Now, from what I believe, Conor Howard's on press duty today. Sometimes that would suggest that means he's going to start. Personally, I'd like to see Malumbi and Knight in there with Cullen, a 3-man midfield. And, you know, I was disappointed with Howard's performance in the playoff final. But then again, I was disappointed with Swansea's performance. So maybe he suffered the fact that they didn't get as much of the ball as they would have liked. But he certainly impressed when he got that loan move from Villa to Swansea. But yeah, Josh Cullen is a player that has shown that, you know, he's certainly good enough in that position. Malumbi is a player that Stephen Kenny knows so well. And Jason Knight, of the 3 of those, he's the one that probably excites me the most. Obviously, Derby had a torrid season. They survive in the last 8, but this is a player that is highly thought of at Derby, and you wonder how much longer he's going to be there.
Well, I was going to ask, like, do you want him to have one more season at Derby? Because he's still very young. A full season at Derby where he plays and they do okay might be the right thing for him to do from his career development, rather than getting a move to a team where he's going to sit on the bench for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Games are so crucial, because you look at the 3 players we talked about when Stephen Kenny was in charge of the under-21s: Aaron Connolly, Adam Ida and Troy Parrott. So these were all, like, you know, the future was so bright for them, and it still is. They're still so young. But look at what they've done since they kind of came into the conversation with the under-21s. Troy Parrott went to Millwall, didn't really work, went to Ipswich, then to League One, scored a few goals. So, you know, that's where he is in terms of his development. Ada obviously had an injury. He's part of the Norwich squad that has just come up, but how much game time is he going to get in the Premier League, considering he only made 1 start in the Championship? And then the other player, Aaron Connolly, is, you know, he's not a regular for Brighton. Again, another player troubled by injury. So it just shows that we've got some really talented young players coming through, but to make that jump to be a full senior international that plays regularly for the club is not that easy.
Like, it is interesting. This is the first, I guess, well talked up crop of Irish youngsters that has existed since the proper globalisation of football. So this is like the first time we've all been paying really close attention, and we made this point yesterday, Phil, to how bloody tough it is to make it. And I think that's really being underlined when we're watching these kids. There was almost this expectation, Phil, that it was like, oh, this guy's going to have a, like, and this goes for like Parrott, and it goes for Connolly and Ida as well, but certainly when it comes to Troy Parrott, it's like, oh, this guy's going to have some sort of like Mason Greenwood-esque breakout. He's at Tottenham, he's going to get his break, and I think we're all starting to realise that it's just so much tougher to actually allow that to happen than it would have done 20 years ago. So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops over the next little while. But from that 3, you're obviously only going to pick 1, I think, in your starting team for tomorrow night, Phil? Yeah,
I think Adam Ida, I think, obviously, you know, as I mentioned, he was injured for a large chunk of the second half of the season, comes back into the Norwich team towards the end of the season, scored a goal as well. So I'd like to see him play down the centre, and then Darryl Horgan maybe on the left-hand side of the front 3, and a new cap in Ogbena. This is a player that Stephen Kenny is excited by. He's mentioned the fact that we don't have a player like him with blistering pace that can take on defenders and just scare defenders and open up space for other players. Because at times you see with us, we get the ball, we pass it around. Obviously, there is more of an emphasis to keep the ball under Stephen Kenny, but we get to the edge of the box and it can break down and you have to recycle it. Whereas if you've got a player that just gets the ball and runs at defenders, it just opens things up. And again, this is a player that had a lot of injuries this season, or towards, I'm still getting used to calling it last season, because the season is done and dusted in terms of the club season, but came back into the Rotherham squad towards the end of the season. And yeah, he's a player that would excite me. And there is a few players like that where give it a few years and, we could have a really exciting team. And I think that obviously, look, it's 11 games without a win for Stephen Kenny. We know that results are what matters. And just looking at the development, he's obviously been in charge of the under-21s, but he's so aware of what's coming up through the 19s, 17s. And in the past, we haven't had Ireland managers that do that. Whether Stephen Kenny gets to see out this project, only results can determine that. But it's just encouraging to have a manager that knows everything about all these Irish players coming through. But now it's a case of you have to get it done on the pitch at senior level. We have to start getting results, because we're now getting into the stage where come September, fans are going to be back at the Aviva Stadium. They want to see, obviously, football played a certain way, but they want to see results. Yeah. And they want to get behind this team. But how can you get behind the team that doesn't win games?
Phil, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks, lads.
Phil's team there, just in case you missed it: Kelleher in goals, Doherty, Egan, Omabamidele and Manning. It's the back four. Malumbi, Cullen and Knight in midfield. Ogbene, Ida and Horgan up front. What do you think? Yeah, it's a good team. That midfield three is really exciting. I know Josh Cullen has been doing interviews in the papers this morning, and just I think the more you listen to him talk, the more you start to think to yourself, why are kids wasting their time with England? And the cut and thrust of that, and Cullen knows it better than anybody else. 14 years on West Ham's books, I think it is, and just the way he's thriving in Belgium at the moment. Going to be playing Europa League football again next year. Probably an underachievement. They probably feel that they could have gone to the Champions League, Anderlecht, but and he's even making the point that sometimes we say, oh, you've got to have this sort of tippy-tappy football to be able to make it on the continent, and he's like, that's just not the case. Not that you don't necessarily have to have that ability, but some of the opposition you come up against are kind of like your standard lower league, Premier League teams. Just the sort of rudimentary style that they bring to the table. So, but yeah, no, it's a really good team, and that midfield three, as I say, the more minutes they get together, the more you start to think there could be a future for those three together. We do have a recurring joke on the show about the clock is ticking. This is because the day that Thomas Tuchel got the gig, Henry Winter wrote in the whatever papers. It's still ticking. That the clock was ticking from that moment for Tuchel. And look, in fairness, I suppose that at Chelsea, it is true. It's just that that move turned out to be a brilliant move by Roman Abramovich. It's fair to say the clock's ticking on Stephen Kenny, and it's going to be a really fast year, because the 2-year qualifying campaign for the next World Cup isn't really going to be a 2-year campaign, given that the Euros have telescoped and everything. Everybody knows all the COVID reasons, right? So there's no point in me going on about it. But it's like a blink and you miss it qualifying campaign at this point, and we've kind of missed it already. So what needs to happen for everybody to go, let's give Kenny a chance and a full Euros campaign after this World Cup? What do we need to see? Because at some point, it's great having new caps and new players come through and excitement about the future, but we actually live in the present. Yeah, like it's very hard to make a case that Ireland are going to be even in the conversation to qualify for the next World Cup. I think I would, as much as we were saying kind of tongue-in-cheek yesterday, they'll only be 4 points off second place if they win their game in hand. I still think it's a bit of a write-off. I do think if they manage to cause some sort of an upset and get a point off Portugal, that is getting close to the point of needing to happen. Maybe you win against Serbia in the return game. Maybe needs to happen if things continue on this trend, because obviously he's not going to have a qualification to show for his efforts over the next little while. In the short term, obviously, if we're even talking about needing to get a win against Andorra, we're in a bad place. But we can't be possibly entertaining a draw or a defeat in that. It becomes a way bigger story. They don't win tomorrow night, basically. And then next week against Hungary, it's kind of like, if they ended up getting something, if they ended up not getting beaten by Hungary, even beating them next week would be kind of like, oh, they're playing in the Euros. We've beaten them, we've done it, we've put up a good effort against them. There might be a bit more of a positive tint to it, but it is still 2 friendlies before European Championships. Ireland are very much not in the spotlight at the moment. Yeah, but does he not need 2 wins in a way? This week? Yeah. It certainly wouldn't hurt, but I think a win against Andorra and a draw against Hungary, I don't think people are going to be... Yeah, fair enough. Nobody's going to say they underachieved, really. All right, give us your thoughts. 0879 180 180. Will you watch the game against Andorra tomorrow night? Is there enough interest in the team at the moment? Is there enough excitement about some of those new players coming through? You can leave a comment in the YouTube stream, or of course you can tweet us at @OffTheBall or at @OffTheBallAM. Now, let's get into this. It is our Euro cheat sheet, Group E. Poland is next, and we need our 90-second timer because you're going to take it away.
Let's do it. So, Poland are looking to build on their performance in Euro 2016 when they got out of a group at the Euros for the first time in their history. After a more routine group stage exit at the 2018 World Cup, they lost just one game in qualifying for this tournament. But do not be fooled by that record. They were extremely mediocre, finishing top of an easy group involving Austria and North Macedonia. Last November, after a defeat to Italy in the Nations League, Robert Lewandowski was asked about his national manager, Jerzy Bzecek, and the tactics he employed. Lewandowski stood in silence for 9 full seconds before eventually criticising the manager anyway. Needless to say, that guy on your screen is no longer the manager. They have instead brought in Paulo Sousa, who you will absolutely not remember from such things as being a former manager of QPR, Swansea and Leicester City. His main aim is to keep the star happy and to get him scoring goals. Lewandowski has only ever scored twice at a major tournament. That is 2 goals at a major tournament in 11 games, but he has scored 41 goals in 29 Bundesliga games this season. An absolutely absurd tally from Lewandowski all year long. Surely the best version we're ever going to see of him at a tournament. But please, this summer, keep in your thoughts Arkadiusz Milik and Krzysztof Piatek, 2 really good Polish strikers who have scored goals for their national team and for their club teams over the years, but will forever exist in the shadow of Lewandowski, who will inevitably play until he is 50. Piatek is injured, there he is on the right-hand side, and he's not even in the squad, but no one, I think, even noticed. Anyway, let's finish up by looking at the kits. Here is the home kit. Standard white jersey with a pretty interesting collar, I think it's fair to say. And here is the away kit. The crest in the middle, I'm not sure, does it ruin it, does it make it? I'm sure somebody has an opinion on that.
What's your opinion?
I kind of like that away jersey. I'm a traditionalist. I like my my crest on my heart. But I suppose actually your heart is kind of actually more central than the crest on the left-hand side. So maybe...
Good biology knowledge there,
yeah.
just dropping it like unprompted.
I mean, like, listen, my brain cells do be providing stuff on a Wednesday morning. Yeah, like, I mean, I'm a big fan of that away jersey. I would be kissing that crest if I was Polish and scoring goals.
Okay, so the form line, mediocre?
Yeah, they drew 1-1 with Russia last night, actually, and since qualifying for the Euros, they avoided relegation from League A of the Nations League, which isn't bad. They beat Bosnia and Herzegovina home and away. They survived in that league. That's all you can really ask for. Then they were drawn in England's group in World Cup qualifying, got beaten in Wembley at the end of March, but have beaten Andorra and drawn away in Hungary. Some of the key decisions for the manager this summer is going to be in goals. We obviously know that they've been well stacked down through the years there. It's going to be Fabianski versus Szczesny. Szczesny may be more likely to get the nod, but Fabianski's been really good all season for West Ham. In defence, Jan Bednarek of Southampton is really stepping up to be a leader there. He'll slot in beside Glick. So between the two of them and their goalkeeper, they're solid at the back. And their midfield is pretty stacked, to be quite honest. When you look through some of the names, Gregor Krychowiak, formerly of West Brom and Paris Saint-Germain, will start, and his partner Karol Linetti is one to watch. He's a good player with Torino, and they've obviously got Mateusz Klich of Leeds as well in that number 10 role behind Robert Lewandowski, who literally has the hopes of the entire nation on his back.
Like when you were going through Scotland yesterday, and you're going through this now, any of these teams who have a little bit about them and some star players, those star players can get on a run, and all of a sudden these teams go through a last 16, a quarter-final on penalties, and they're dangerous because these are international tournaments. Like, none of these international sides are absolutely festooned, with the exception maybe of England, with absolute superstars, and they've got a terrible manager, so they're probably not going to achieve anything. So what is your prediction? I
think they're going to finish second in this group. They will lose in the last 16 to Croatia. But the wild card is Lewandowski. So many of these teams, it's almost like become a cliche, is that they don't have a number 9.
Well, he scores the hat-trick against Croatia, and you're not surprised, are you?
No, there you go. And like even with Scotland yesterday, yes, they have talent. Their number 9 is going to be Shea Adams, and while I think Shea Adams is a good player, he's no Robert Lewandowski. And that is one thing in fairness with England, is that they do have Harry Kane, and like there have been fantastic number 9s for England in the past that perhaps haven't been able to deliver at a tournament. Kane kind of tends to step up when it matters for England, and maybe that just isn't true, considering he doesn't actually have a medal to show for it. But I think between Kane, Lewandowski and Romelu Lukaku, and of course Benzema coming back into the France fold, that position is going to be so important, because there are so many teams just without a really good and reliable number 9.
Right, let's go back to Rafa Benitez. Everton, a small club, said Rafa Benitez. So Niall is saying, I'm not sure that appointment as manager will go down well with toffees. You can change your mind, can't you? I mean, they were a small club, But the new owner has great plans. It's going to have that stadium that sits right beside the water. Nothing beside water these days is anyway a bad idea, is it? As the water rises. Apparently, we were talking about this before. Apparently, when the floods come, the water will run underneath the stadium, and the stadium will essentially float like.
Nice.
One of those things
like a boat
in the Kevin Costner movie Waterworld. You're just floating around. Will says he was in charge of some of the greatest collection of players ever. Then, without a hint of irony, would you rather have Guardiola or Ancelotti? Says Carlo Ancelotti's agent, Will.
It's a fair point. At the same time, though, it's obvious from that dilemma who you pick, but it'll never be a real dilemma for a manager. Like Benitez, Ancelotti, obviously different in ways, but there is a pragmatism at the heart of what they both try to do. They're both winning managers, they will tell you, or their agent will try and tell you. So it's either a very seamless move into Benitez from Ancelotti, or else it's a moment to just stay where you are. Like maybe unless you're right in that Ancelotti really is not what he once was as a manager, and Tenth was a drastic underachievement. Does Benitez then do a West Ham on it next year and bring that group of players close to a Champions League qualification spot? I think you kind of look at certain areas of their team and you're like, they're probably good enough to make some sort of challenge like that. Like nobody at the start of the season, when they were doing so well, was like, wow, this is an absolute fairy tale. Everybody was like, yeah, these are really good players. So maybe the second half of the season was just this terrible thing from Ancelotti. Maybe Everton are lucky.
7 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. Packed show, so we got to get into it. We're going to hear loads of stuff coming up in the next couple of minutes. Aimee Mackin is going to join us to talk Gaelic football, and Jason Quigley is up very soon. We'll run you through the papers next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Rugby podcasts? If not, here's some of what you've missed in the last week.
Since he has been suspended, I've had some interesting messages. My mum hasn't come out great from it. It's been interesting to say the least.
He would give it to you, and he gave it to me several times, and I was running around after him trying to kill him for the rest of the session.
Subscribe now to the OTB Rugby podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, or get the entire OTB catalogue on the OTB Sports app.
At Online Tradesmen, we've never been busier. And if you're a trade professional, there's never been a better time to join us. Access over €17 million worth of jobs nationwide every month, along with e-learning and other supports. Need a website for your business? It's included in your membership. And on average, Online Tradesmen members get up to 10 times their fee back in new sales, marketing tools and savings. Apply today at onlinetradesmen.ie. Online Tradesmen, the home of qualified trade professionals.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Okay, let's bring it through the newspapers, and we'll start with OTBSports.com. Greta Strymikte, I'm not sure what the pronunciation, I could be a little bit off on that, sets new European best in winning gold in Poland's one of our Paralympians. Mateus Pep Guardiola deserved to lose the Champions League final. I mean, I think that's a lot of people would say that, but Lothar Matthäus, he's entitled to his opinion. England can build Euro side around Rice, and Grealish has Phil Thompson twisting the dagger even further. And Mike Quirke's story of his son's illness will resonate with every parent. So Mike Quirke is raising money for Temple Street by doing a podcast, and we're delighted to be supporting it on OTB Sports. You can get it on our GAA feed. It's called the Mike Quirke Podcast. And you should have a listen to it. It's essentially a high-performance show where he talks to a bunch of different people from different walks of life. So there's camogie, there's Formula One, there's rugby, there's basketball and college sports in particular. On the first episode with Russ Bradford, who of course would have been his coach with the Tralee Tigers at one stage when he was playing there. So a brilliant podcast series that's going to be coming every Tuesday on the OTB Podcast Network. And you can subscribe to it there, or of course you can also get it wherever you get your pods these days, and an hour rate wouldn't go amiss, or a share, and that will definitely help raise some funds for Temple Street as well. Very quickly through the newspapers back page of the Daily Mail this morning. Toffee shock. Ancelotti quits Everton to join Real Madrid, and that's Gavin Bazunu in goals, training in Girona outside Barcelona ahead of tomorrow's clash with Andorra. So not quite sure who's going to get the nod in goals just yet, but certainly we have some options. The Daily Mirror, calling the shots. Calling the shots. Andorra versus Ireland. Josh, it hasn't been good enough, but the players all know how we can put that right. I'll help you right. Carlo out, Moyes in. That's one of the suggestions that perhaps all the messing around that West Ham have done with David Moyes means that he will be the next Everton manager. And maybe that's a homecoming that does make sense. The Irish Independent, City to bid for Kane to send strong message. What's the message that they would send?
That they're good at football?
City will look to invest in at least 2 areas this window and are looking at Jack Grealish. Kane wants to leave Spurs, but Chairman Daniel Levy wants him to stay. It's called a tug of love. Other strikers at the top bracket of the market include Haaland and Lukaku. So everybody wants Lukaku this summer.
Why wouldn't you want him? Is that a brilliant season?
I don't know. I would prefer one of the other two. The Telegraph, Southgate on defensive over Euro squad, and that's a picture of Trent whipping it across. But apparently people don't want that. They don't want 4 right backs. Southgate saying they're not really 4 right backs for us. Kyle Walker has played left back. Reece James is in midfield against Villa and has played on the right side of a 3. Obviously, Trent can play in midfield if required. And Trippier plays both right wing back and right back, which is 4 separate positions. So I don't know. He said we've got our 26 best players, and they probably have got the 26 best players. The Herald back page, City prepared to make Kane bid. And they also have, there was no issue over funds, as GAA, says Cork GAA Chairman. Cork GAA Chairman Mark Sheahan has made it clear to his board there was no misappropriation of funds in either of the 2 bank accounts which have come to light in recent weeks as part of a trawl by the county's Audit and Risk Committee. One of the accounts is a holiday fund, relevant to 2009 to 2011 when the Cork footballers were among the game's dominant teams. 87 grand in one of those. And the other is a helmet and hurley subsidy scheme, and 89 grand sitting in that account. So Cork GA trying to get to the bottom of exactly what happened there, and they say that they'll have a full report in July at the July meeting of the county board. So here we go. It is the back of the Guardian. England's waiting game. Southgate admits Maguire doubt for group stages. So Harry Maguire and Jordan Henderson both doubts for the opening game against Croatia, and who knows if Maguire will be back for the group stages at all. Pretty risky, isn't it, bringing somebody with an injury like that?
Yeah, the Maguire thing is a massive deal for England. They can live without Henderson because they've got good depth in that position, but I think that there's a drop-off once they lose Harry Maguire.
Southgate, blame me if England fail. Oh, don't worry, Gareth, they will. They are already lining up the dartboards, the effigies and everything else that comes with being a scapegoat for, you mean you got an ad for Pizza Hut out of missing the penalty, didn't you? The Times, Ancelotti seals return to Real and Osaka has to follow the rules. Wimbledon officials have offered Naomi Osaka their support after being criticised for joining other Grand Slam tournaments and threatening the world number 2 with a suspension, but they insist she will not be given special treatment. So, in light of Osaka explaining on Monday that she'd suffered bouts of depression for the past 3 years, the initial heavy-handed approach to the Grand Slams has been criticised. But it doesn't say that they've actually done anything about what would happen if she continues to... so they've had criticism from a bunch of tennis players, including Laura Robson. He says saying she was potentially going to be defaulted was quite strong and maybe unnecessary, but it doesn't say. A more conciliatory tone was noticeable yesterday in another joint statement. The French Open, Wimbledon, Australian and US Open said a commitment to make improvements to the players' media requirements was offered, although it was stressed that these would apply to everyone rather than Osaka alone. We wish to offer Naomi Osaka our support and assistance in any way possible as she takes time away from the court. While players' well-being has always been a priority at the Grand Slams, our intention, together with the WTA, the ATP and the ITF, is to advance mental health and well-being through further actions. And then they went on to continue that statement with that one as well. So, Prem Per I Nuno. Are you surprised that everybody wants Nuno after watching a fairly boring team play football over the last 18 months, 2 years in particular?
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? It's kind of like what happened to Wolves over the course of the last season. It's just, I do think that his stock is still very much in a good place. Maybe it'd be a good move for Nuno more than anybody else to actually listen to any offers at this point, and maybe with a club like Everton he could do a little bit more with the squad, or maybe has a bit of a better squad than is currently at play at Wolves. But yeah, it's just really hard to put your finger on why exactly they've been so mediocre given how quickly they took to Premier League life.
What's his philosophy as a footballer, as a football manager? Is it that they need to be a counter-attacking team, and so therefore that's what Wolves did, and he could do something else with a so-called bigger club, or is that how he wants to play football?
Like that'll be an interesting one, because Everton are sort of in between two places at the moment, where in a handful of their games they will be out of possession for most of the game, and in maybe the slight majority of their games they'll have most of the possession. So you kind of need to be versatile as an Everton manager, and maybe Nuno, when he comes in as a newly promoted manager with that squad, I know it's kind of an easy thing to say, but it does seem that their style of play was maybe more suited to being the new kids on the block. With that Everton squad, that wouldn't necessarily be the case. There would need to be more of a control to what happens, and maybe Nuno's style is just chaos and brilliant speed on the flanks, and maybe Everton don't necessarily play in that sort of way. But I would back him to do a pretty good job at Everton. But like the Moyes thing just makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If they can get him.
Okay. And the other thing there is it's Palace are the other team who are interested in Nuno, and that makes some sense.
Yeah. If Palace can get their hands on Nuno, absolutely. Palace, you would have to say at this point, after Hodgson's departure, I'm sure will be top of everybody's list to go down next season. But it feels like they've been top of everybody's list to go down every season for the last 5 years or however long it's been. Hodgson seemed to be the common denominator in that for the last couple of years, that he was keeping them in the league. I think maybe this is now the time, unless they manage to catch a fish like Nuno. But I'm not sure if going from Wolves to Palace is necessarily the best move for him. To Everton it would be, though.
Where is Eddie Howe going to get a job?
Oh God, I don't know. What do we think? Is the Palace thing the one that is that the likely destination we think?
Well, if you're the person picking that role, right, and you're the chairman, and it's your job to make sure they don't go down, are you going to pick a manager who's recently taken a team down?
I don't know. Like, I mean, there's talk. The Daily Record describe Everton link as a dream move, obviously, for Eddie Howe, as boyhood heroes. I mean, this is there's so many different theories out there about Eddie Howe, about the brand of football that he brought at Bournemouth and how exciting they were to watch. That ultimately left them in a place where they kind of gone around in circles and are struggling now to get back into the Premier League after he's left, obviously. So
they are a tiny club. So, like, maybe he's much better at a bigger club, and maybe this is his opportunity to prove that. It's just really hard to know. Their transfer dealing was bad, and if he was responsible for that, then just make sure he's not responsible for the transfer dealing into the future. But if he wasn't responsible for it, then, you know, he did okay with the hand that he was dealt. The Star this morning, that's my Lottie, Carlo Ancelotti. Toffee's stuck as Carlo heads away to Real, and Josh, what the doctor ordered, Josh Cullen, is there, and Gareth Defiant, and that is the crack with those. Do you have time to tell you about Sergio Aguero? Before he left the Etihad, he bought each of the 60 backroom employees either a Hublot, I don't even know how to say the name of this expensive watch.
Neither do I, actually. I've never heard. Always in my head thought it was Hublot. But, like, I mean, I'm absolutely not moving in those circles of anybody who would need a Hublot, or a Hublot. I've got no idea how to pronounce it. Hublot, probably, yeah.
That's French, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, the French, I mean, if it was, it could be Swiss French, couldn't it? Or Tag Heuer watch. So, I mean, it seems like it's kind of a bit of 50-50 here, but if you were on the side of the Tag Heuer, is that what the other one is?
Tag Heuer. I'm saying that with the confidence of somebody who's...
Tag Heuer is we're going to go with. So if you get one of the tags, it's $1,000 to $1,600. But if you get one of the Hublots, it's $8,000. I mean...
What?
Can I have one of these? Can I have one of these? Which one are you going to give me? Come on, do you love me? Come on, think of all those times I picked up your bibs after you threw them on the ground nonchalantly, Sergio. What about it? And then they said that his Range Rover is only worth $40,000, but you're not getting a Sergio Aguero style Range Rover for $40,000 in Ireland. It's like 110, 120.
Did he get like a Sergio Aguero discount? Like, is that what we're seeing here? Did he like go into the car shop and they're like, oh, you're Sergio Aguero, 40k?
I don't know. And then he also left a lot of money for the Christmas party.
Yeah, I saw that. Good guy, Sergio. You were picking up on the fact that his hair is weird?
Well, it just looks like It just looks like it's been cut by his ma by sticking a bowl around it in the style of the great Irish communion haircuts.
Yeah, like I did. Once you see the Sergio Aguero hair, yeah, go and seek it out. If you get a high quality picture of Sergio Aguero in the last couple of days in Barcelona, you can't unsee it.
And it hasn't changed at all at any point. It's which is fair play to him. You know, I think he's committed to it and doesn't care, which is great. And that generosity that he's had, maybe it is a sign the footballers are getting paid a bit too much, is it?
Maybe it is. I don't know. It's a heart of gold from Sergio Aguero.
It is a heart of gold. It is a heart of gold.
Literally.
So we have a poll running. Would you have an issue with Rafa Benitez taking charge of Everton? Yes, utter treachery. This is Liverpool fans were asking. Or no, goodwill to all men. So let's just vote on that and see what it is. Oh, goodwill to all men says 68%. 73% a couple of minutes ago. It is now in live time coming to 68%. So some of the Liverpool fans are like, yeah, no, this is treachery. Don't do it. Now the thing is, if he goes there and it's unsuccessful, that won't damage his Liverpool legacy at all, will it?
It'll enhance it.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I feel like he was some kind of sleeper cell.
I get the feeling if Rafa at Everton would be a success, though. I get the feeling that Rafa would actually beat Liverpool in a derby. I know that it happened this year already under Ancelotti, so it could easily happen again. But I've got a feeling Rafa at Everton would just work. And all of a sudden, the sort of treachery thing, all of a sudden is less jovial and more like, screw Rafa. Like, yeah. I mean, everybody, those Liverpool fans who are saying it's not treacherous, like, let's be perfectly clear here, are only saying that because they see Everton as not a threat whatsoever.
Exactly.
They see it as like this funny club that occupies the other side of the city. If Rafa Benitez does what Carlo Ancelotti did for the first half of the season, but does it for the whole year, and all of a sudden they're a bit of a problem, I think the Rafa Benitez love might dwindle a little bit.
All right, 22 minutes past 8 this morning, OTB AM, live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. I'm delighted to say Jason Quigley is with us to talk to us about his win against Shane Mosley Jr. at the weekend. Jason, good morning to you. How are you doing?
Good morning, lads. How's the form?
How are you feeling physically after that?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, to be honest. Physically, a little bit stiff and sore now. Jet lag is kicking in a bit. I'm up every morning about 4 or 5 listening to the birds singing every morning. But apart from that, everything's all good.
And whereabouts in the world are you then? If you're obviously back in this part of the world.
Yeah, I'm up in back home in Donegal, so I am. We got in on Monday morning from the States, from Vegas on Monday morning. We flew right away the Sunday morning after the fight. And got back in then to Dublin on Monday morning around 7 a.m. and I was straight up the road through the hills Donegal.
I always find it weird when you come back from one of those trips, and I have no experience of actually obviously being at something like you've just done, but where you go from the skyscrapers and the heat, and all of a sudden you're a world away and you're going, did that really happen? I can only imagine what it's like for you coming down off the high of a Titanic back and forth like that. So what is this week like for you? What's going through your head right now?
To be honest, it was probably last night was the first night that I actually kind of got to sit down and just actually think about what happened and actually realize what happened. Everything else was just a bit like it was a blur. It was like a dream. It was like one of those times, you know, you wake up and you're like, did that really happen or was that a dream? It was a weird kind of feeling, you know, the first few days back, because as you says, like obviously I was in Vegas there for a full week leading up to the fight, you know, with media, workouts, press conferences, weigh-ins, everything along those lines. And yeah, it was pretty crazy then. All of a sudden, the fight happens. You won. You're on a high. You're on a buzz. You're on a plane. Next thing, you're sitting in your house in Donegal again. It's like, what just went on there? So yeah, there's definitely a sense of probably confusion and what day and what time, and that's just the jet lag. That's just the hype and the emotion of everything that went on. So But no, it's good. I'm starting to come around to myself now a bit and starting to become more aware of things.
Well, tell us about the emotion, will you? Because obviously it's been quite the roller coaster to get to this point. And you talked about it afterwards in the press conference afterwards. You talked about, people have no idea what we go through, and you didn't want to single yourself out. But like, your story is your story, and so you're the only one who's actually lived it. It was a huge outpouring of emotion from you. Why so emotional in the aftermath of this fight in particular?
Look, as it says in my post-fight interview, boxing is probably one of the most unpredictable sports out there. There's so many highs and lows in boxing. There's never anything guaranteed. And obviously with the year and a half that we've had, not just in sport, but just in life in general, for everybody, whether you're a sports person, work a 9-to-5 job, business owner, whatever it is, everybody's been through a really difficult year. And for me in my career, I've had 5 fights that were supposedly meant to happen that had fallen through. And this actual fight then alone with Shane Mosley was meant to happen at the end of January, fell through, was meant to happen at the start of February, fell through. Then leading up into this fight, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to get into the country to make this fight actually happen over into America. There was so many things, there's so many moving parts going on, and it just never felt like it was certain. It never felt as if this was actually going to happen. And finally, when I got to Vegas, everything started to just fall into place for me. Better late than never, I suppose. But once I got to Vegas, that week leading into the fight, everything just started to come together, and it was realistic. You knew it was happening. It was just a few days away. And I think it was just a matter of everything that had happened through the last year and a half. What was on the line in that fight as well, it was a crossroads fight for both of us, really. The winner, me now, is obviously talking about the likes of a Bobo Andrade fight, a world championship fight, and the loser is, where do you go from here? What's next? How do you rebuild? Who's going to fight you? Who's going to want to fight you? What's the purpose in fighting you? So there was a lot of things. There was a lot of things that just whenever Ballybuffet, County Donegal was called out, it was just dropped to my knees, and just everything just took over me, to be honest.
Does the defeat part of that fork in the road come into your mind at all in the build-up to the fight?
To be honest, no. The only times that it really came into my mind was when somebody mentioned it. We had fighter meetings leading into the fight. We had meetings with the TV crew, DAZN, the analysts that were going to be on the night. Just talking how training camp went, how this went, how that went. The defeat to Turiano Johnson. How have you learned from this? How have you moved on from this? So that was the only really time that it came up, or that it came into my head. Which is obviously a good thing. But that was a setback in my career, and that was another thing that I kind of shrugged off my shoulders in that fight as well, because yes, I've had 2 fights since then. The caliber of opponent and the level of the fight wasn't the same caliber or at the same high level as this fight was. So this fight had a lot more meaning. There was a title on the line. It was Las Vegas. It was on a massive card. It was a big stage and a big podium to go on and to put in a performance and come away with a victory.
That period of time away from the ring over the last while, is that and you've gone straight home after this fight as well. We've talked to you, and you've been living in various parts of the world. And I'm just wondering, we've all, I think, taken a little bit of time over particularly the last 6 months to go, what is it that we're doing with our lives, and are we sure we're doing the right thing, and who are the people that are around us, and who do we want to spend time with? From your perspective in terms of your career and your life, have you got a clear idea of what the future looks like?
Yeah, look, it's I think a lot of questions were answered for everybody over the last year and a half in terms of what they want out of life, how they were living life. You know, people have really got to pause and to look at things, because before COVID, everything was just 100 miles an hour. Like, if you weren't busy flat out doing something every single day, there was something wrong, or, you know, you were doing something wrong. Whereas now people are starting to realize that it's actually good to just pause and chill out and, you know, enjoy life and take the things that we take for granted, nourish them things a little bit more. And for me, obviously, I've done that a lot the past few years because I've had the time being out injured and, you know, fights not happening and been out of the gym for a while and different things that got there. I've had the time to reassess things and to put my life in order and to put what's most important for me and what makes me happy into pole position. And I have done that now, and I have really, you know, I've really got to a place now where I have a great structure in my life. Very mature now and where I'm at, and it was just like a build of everything kind of coming together, you know, moving back to Ireland, training with Andy, you know, being closer to home, being around my people that I love and that I want to be with more. And yeah, like any of my fights that I've had in the States, like I've always probably stayed a week, 2 weeks after them, but this time I was like, first flight on Sunday, get me back home again. So, you know, I was delighted to get back home nice and early and to be back with the people that I want to celebrate with.
And so what is the structure now into the future? Like, are you living in Dublin? Is that it? And if there's training camps, you'll go to training camps? Are you going to live in Ballybuffet and come down to Dublin for training camps? What's the plan? Yeah, like I'm based in Dublin for training. You know, I have my place up there that I stay for training, and that's where I'm going to be based throughout my career now until you know, anything drastic happens or anything drastic changes. So that's our camp, like that's our base where we train with Andy. That's where the team is now, and yeah, I come back to Donegal pretty regularly, and but it's such a breeze now. Like it's 2.5, 3 hours up and down the road whenever you want, and your family, people, your friends, whatever, they can just come down and visit you. So my base is looking into the future now. It's going to be in Dublin with Andy and our camp up there. And if needs be, a fight's in Vegas or a fight's over in LA or in the States, we might go over there for a training camp if needs be. But now we're set up now, and the base is going to be Dublin, and whatever fights come along, we'll adjust accordingly coming up to them.
We saw the scenes a couple of moments ago on screen in Ballybuffet when you came home, a bit of a homecoming. I'm sure you were jet lagged as hell trying to soak it all in that moment. Yeah, like in a weird way, do you feel closer to home at the moment? You mentioned there that you're making more of an effort to come home quicker after fights. Is that to do with your relationship at home, that it is getting a bit deeper?
Yeah, like without a doubt. You know, whenever I first moved to LA, I was never as glad to get away from Donegal and where I'm from, and just you know, you're young, you want to spread your wings. And, you know, I'd done that, and I went out there to LA, and first year and a half, I was like, this is unbelievable, I'm never coming home again. But after that year and a half, and after the novelty kind of wore off, I started to miss home, I started to miss the people. And, you know, my manager texted me last night, and he says to me, I just seen the video of your homecoming. Now I know why you love home so much. And, like, it was such a special moment, that homecoming, not just for me coming back like after winning, but this year and a half that we've had every town around Ireland has been dead. Nobody has been out and about. Everybody's kind of been a sob story. Everything has kind of been nothing to celebrate, nothing to get happy about, nothing to get excited about. But for me, coming through there, I was hanging out the window of the car. I was on a buzz. I was enjoying things. I was having a good crack. Like, whereas the parade of cars that came behind me and was part of the homecoming, whenever it was all over and they were coming chatting to me, there was a lot of emotions. A lot of people were coming up to me saying, I got so emotional driving through the town to actually see elderly people, businesses, school children out on the streets with happiness, with celebration, with smiles on their faces. There were so many people came up to me saying that they got emotional driving through the town. And you know, it's like, I'm just a fella that's getting into the ring, doing my job, doing what I have to do. And if that's going to spread this kind of joy back at home, it's a blessing. Like, it's such a success, really, you know.
And imagine if you'd stuck around in America for a week and missed that, and that hadn't happened. Like, I can see totally how this is, it's crossroads really, but it's a huge moment in some ways.
Yeah, like I've been to Vegas, I've fought there before, I've went into Vegas when I haven't fought, and you know, I've seen Vegas, I've done Vegas. But for my fight, I never once went up the strip. I never went near any of the touristy things, the attractions. And I was only in the Mandalay Bay Hotel. And Vegas is open now. Like, Vegas is 100% free for all. COVID is a long distant memory now over there. But for me in fight week, the only time I left my hotel was I go to a lovely Mediterranean restaurant whenever I have a fight coming up. It's very good, clean food, plenty of vegetables, nice clean chicken, everything like that. So I always find a certain Mediterranean restaurant that I'll go to once every day leading up to the fight. And it was a 5-minute drive away. And that was the only time I left the hotel, was for a bite of food every day. And like, I was just so happy. I was there on business. Like, I had business to take care of, but there was no ambition to stay an extra few days in Vegas and hit the casinos or the nightclubs or do any of that type of celebration. It was just get me back home to Donegal and get me back home to Ireland and just to see everyone. And you know, fair play to everyone that came out and made it such a special welcome home.
Would a younger Jason Quigley have been like, all right, let's get my suit on and hit the casino?
A younger Jason Quigley is still in Vegas. I wouldn't be here chatting to you. But no, like, as I said, look, I've kind of got to that stage now in my career and in my life where, you know, I've done a lot of things like that, and you know, I have experienced a lot, but you know, I have blinkers on now, whereas I have a more tunnel vision of knowing what I want, a more kind of a structured vision of what I want and how to get there. And yeah, it's Vegas now doesn't really appetize me. And I just turned 30 there as well, so I didn't even get a birthday party properly yet, so I could have used that excuse as well and stayed the extra few days.
Well, happy birthday, belatedly, Jason.
Cheers.
So, like, I mean, does that make you a better fighter, or am I just connecting two dots that should never be connected here? This idea that you've got the blinkers on at this point.
Yeah, without a doubt. You know, it's not going to make you a more technically better fighter or nothing, but it's going to make you a more mature, mentally focused fighter. And I think that's what has happened to me, and that's what, you know, I think that's what a lot of people seen in this fight as well, that 6th, 7th, 8th round, they seen in you, not in you just clearly, but they seen a different part of my game where I was up on my toes, I was floating about the ring, I was fresh, I was enjoying it, I was smiling at the end of rounds, you know. And I think that was that's a sense of, you know, a mental a mental game that I have improved on, and that we've been working on in the gym with Andy as well, like of just being more present and enjoying the moment and being aware in the situations that you're in, instead of just getting in there and just going all hell for leather, just trying to win the fight and just trying to get it done and over with as quick as possible. So yeah, definitely, it's definitely going to be an improvement to my game for sure.
You'd Wayne McCullough in your corner as well. What was that like?
Like, I'm a very lucky man. You know, Andy couldn't travel to Vegas for the fight. Andy is obviously my coach. He's an ex-Olympian. He's a former world professional middleweight champion. Couldn't do my corner. But who steps in? Only Wayne McCullough, an ex-Olympian and a former world professional boxing champion, both Irish men as well. So, you know, I was very fortunate now that Wayne was there and was able to step in, and he was a great addition to the camp for fight week. He was, you know, very positive. He's been there, he's done it, he's seen it all. Like, there's nothing phases him. There's nobody's going to come in and intimidate him or anything along those lines. He has a nice, controlled, relaxed way about him, and that's vital for fighters leading into a big fight at fight week. You know, he's very calm, cool, relaxed, and obviously always very positive as well. You know, anytime we were doing sessions leading up to the fight, you know, always coming in with good positivity and a good way about him, and, you know, made the whole experience very enjoyable. And then in the corner, he was very good, you know, very calm, relaxed, easy to listen to, you know, no shouting 110 different things at a big roaring and shouting in the corner and confusing you or anything along those lines. You know, very simple, basic instructions, and, you know, very similar to the way Andy is as well.
Yeah, well, when you think about it, he trained under Eddie Futch, so you've got that lineage in your corner, and you've obviously got Andy and all the stuff from the Cronk as well. So it's like the whole weight of boxing history is in that corner for you to draw on. And the other thing is that the style, incredibly exciting, and so people are now talking about what comes next. It was a very open fight. You took, and we can see on your face still the marks of it as well, like incredibly exciting, and a majority decision, so it was close. They're the type of fights that the fans want to see. I presume you'd prefer to win a fight much cleaner and not be as marked, but you know, styles make fights, and styles make fighters get bigger purses and get bigger opportunities.
Yeah, look, this is a fight game. It's a business as well as a sport. And if the fans aren't excited, you know, in nowadays boxing, like, if fans are demanding and wanting fights, or fans are excited about a fighter, that's going to get that fighter opportunities. That's going to get that fighter paid. And that's the way boxing is now. It's not just the promoter or the managers that need that interest. You know, there's a massive interest out there now on social media. If a fighter is trending, if a fighter is popular. So the fight went to plan. I thought the draw decision, or the draw, the judge that had it a draw, you know, I thought, like, yes, it was a close fight, but I didn't think it was that close. I thought I was the cleaner fighter, like the 97-93 as well. Like, that's a pretty wide scorecard. Yeah. You know, and then to get a 95-95, you know, whenever I heard the 95-95, I was like, he's from Vegas, he's American, his father's Sheahan Mosley Sr. I was like, don't do this to me, you know. But, you know, thankfully the other two judges I haven't watched the fight yet, but seen what I had felt throughout the fight. And yeah, look, I felt as if I just felt as if I was the better boxer. I was, you know, landing the cleaner shots. I was doing the bursts in the right time. And, you know, I got hit a few shots, but I was catching a lot of shots and slipping away from a lot of shots as well. Oh, totally. And
there's an extended 12-minute highlights out there if people want to watch it who haven't already seen it, and there's already 300,000 views on it as well. So what's next? Final question for you. What is coming next, do you think, or you hope? What do you want?
No, I would love the fight with Demetrius Andrade, the WBO middleweight champ. I think that it's a very capable, realistic, doable fight, because I obviously have a belt now in the WBO rankings, which is the belt that Demetrius Andrade has, and he struggles to get fights. He's a kind of a avoided fighter. None of the big champions really want to fight him because he's a high risk, low reward type of a fighter. I think the fight would be very interesting stylistically, because he's a boxer and, you know, he can hit, he can bang. You know, he's dropped a lot of his last opponents, but he seems to struggle to get his opponents out of there. He seems to struggle to get the job finished. Which I think that I'd be able to capitalize on by not letting him hurt me and not letting him, land those big power shots on me. But being a real interesting fight for boxing fans that are into the technical side of boxing because of the two styles. And look, that would be a very interesting fight. I would obviously love to get that opportunity. As it says, he does struggle to get fights, so it's something that he doesn't get too often. His lads call him out. Yeah. And without a doubt, that would be a great fight to get, and it is a very doable fight. Well, listen, congratulations. It's well deserved to get to this point, and we all know that the journey's not finished yet. Jason, keep it going. Thanks a million. Top stuff. Thanks for having me, lads. Chat to you soon. Jason Quigley there. We've watched him grow from a talented amateur to now somebody who's holding a belt, and fingers crossed he's going to get that opportunity at a world title fight sooner rather than later. It's 8:46. John Duggan is standing by. John, we're a bit late, but always really good to listen to Jason. Apologies for that. How are you getting on?
Yeah, no, good, Ger, and Eoin, a great win for Jason at the weekend. I'm looking forward to his next fight, and it's great to hear that Vegas is open as well, because I'd love to see him fight there.
I thought you were going to say, because I'm heading. I'm going. Have you been to Vegas?
I've never been to Vegas. Me, the gambling degenerate that I am. That's a joke. Obviously, I'm not. But I'd love to go. I just want to be at one of those tables and go, I'm Mo Green. The blackjack table, if anybody gets the Godfather reference. So I'd just love to go for I love the whole James Ellroy literature around Vegas, and I love the whole Hunter S. Thompson vibe about the whole place and the strip and the desert and all that kind of thing. And the fights and the MGM Grand and all those kind of things. It really is a JD paradise that I've yet to taste. Have you lads been?
I've never been, but I sense a documentary coming on, JD, where you do Vegas and someone films it for posterity. That would be good.
For OTB?
Yeah.
Owen, have you been?
No, I used to want to really go, and now I've got no interest in going, I'm afraid. I would go to watch a fight for sure, but that would be kind of it. It's kind of just like seedy to me, and you can gamble elsewhere in the United States of America now, John. It turns out even if you're at a basketball game, you can rock on up, and there's actual sports books on certain floors of arenas now and all that. So I don't know. It's I wouldn't be much of a betting man anyway. So maybe the whole casino idea doesn't necessarily appeal to me all that much.
The desert and the mob history, that stuff all appeals to me. The casinos that can take or leave.
Well, it's like the Tony Soprano on overlooking Vegas off his head while tripping is the thing that appeals to you, Ger. Is it that
on peyote? Yeah. If you're gonna go and do peyote, you should do it in Vegas.
That's the element of the like that could be a nice little wrinkle to the documentary, John.
well, the pink Cadillacs and just the briefcases full of dollars, and then the trips over the Grand Canyon and helicopters. These are all things that are realizable once COVID-19 is over, and once we get a big winner out of virtual sanity.
What have we got today?
Well, we got news in the Irish Times that Andy Farrell may be joining up with Warren Gatland's coaching staff for the British and Irish Lions tour of South Africa. So the Fiji tour was cancelled. We have games against Japan and the USA in early July, and after that, it will give the freedom for Andy Farrell to go down to South Africa if he so wants. He does get on well with Gatland. He was the defence coach for the 2013 and 17 tours, and we play our first test against South Africa on July the 24th. Carlo Ancelotti's jumped ship. He's gone. He's left Everton. He's left the club after 18 months to go to Real Madrid. How can you resist Florentino Perez? He has signed a 3-year deal in the Spanish capital. He guided them to the Champions League back in 2014. Everton on the lookout for new boss. Would Rafa Benitez be one potential candidate? I wouldn't see much bitterness there between Everton and Liverpool. I think they'd definitely give them their blessing, Liverpool fans. Not that Everton need it, but Nuno Espirito Santo and Eddie Howe will also be linked with the job at Goodison Park. Gareth Southgate, including Trent Alexander-Arnold in a squad for the Euros. I think the more important question is what is the team going to be like with Foden, with Grealish, with Mount. Can they all get into one team? They could play Austria in a friendly tonight in Middlesbrough, with France against Wales and Scotland away to the Netherlands. Brilliant win for Grzesia Strymakita in the Para Athletics Championships in Poland last night. Won a European gold, set a new European record in the T13 1500 metres final. So well done, Greta. And Novak Djokovic and Rafa Nadal easily winning their matches at the French Open. This is easy week, of course. Although what Dominic Thiem was knocked out wasn't easy the other day. Second seed Daniil Medvedev up against Tommy Paul today. Serena Williams to play Mihaela Buzarnescu of Romania. And 8 races on the card at Wexford, starting over jumps at 1:05 and a flat meeting as well at the Curragh lads at 4:30.
All right, JD, good stuff. Thanks a million. Looking forward to this week's Virtual Insanity, which is coming your way on tomorrow's show. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It is 8:50 this morning. The LGFA has announced Glenveagh Homes as the new sponsors of the LGFA's Gaelic for Girls programme. Gaelic for Girls is an 8-week programme incorporating coaching sessions with fun, non-competitive blitzes aimed at increasing participation in Gaelic football. And we're delighted to welcome Gaelic for Girls ambassador Aimee Mackin to the show. Aimee, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. How did you get into Gaelic football? How important is it that stuff like these initiatives actually exist?
Yeah, it's massive. I think, especially in every community across the country, you know, there's a lot of girls out there that maybe don't have the opportunity, and this is a great opportunity for girls to get started in Gaelic football, and I suppose a chance for us as coaches to sort of spread the word and just to get more people involved in ladies football. I think for me, I started out playing with the boys on my club team, and then our club started a Gaelic for Girls programme, and that's how we started our ladies team within our own club. So it's a good kickstart for a club that's looking to start ladies football.
There's been an explosion in numbers playing Gaelic football in the last decade or so, and I think your story is fairly similar to a lot of clubs around the country where there probably wasn't a senior team, but all of a sudden there were 2 under-16 teams and then a minor team, and then it just continued on. The most important thing is making sure that people continue on, particularly in that kind of under-14, under-16 cohorts.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about participation, and I think over the course of my time at under-14 and 16, a lot of the girls might have dropped out, you know, they didn't continue on. And we were lucky in my own club that a lot of the girls that I play senior football with now, it was the same team as our under-12 team 10 years ago. So we were lucky with our club that participation levels stayed consistent. But I know it is an issue with other clubs. So these type of initiatives, it's just all about promoting ladies football, and get the more talk about it, the more participation hopefully it comes. And I think it's up to us as ladies footballers to promote it within our own communities, just to keep the ball rolling.
Did you say you're doing a bit of coaching yourself as well, Aimee?
Yeah, well, I'll be coaching at the Gaelic for Girls programme at my own club. We're fortunate enough to be hosting it ourselves.
Have you done a bit of coaching before?
Yeah, I've done a wee bit. I don't know if I'm much good at it, but I sort of help just use my own experiences to help younger ones in our club. Me and my sister were involved in our under-14 girls team at the minute. So it's nice to sort of give back to your club, because I think they do so much for you. So I think it's always nice to give back.
What's your experience been like then from that perspective, seeing it as somebody who's gone through those ranks and obviously made it at senior level? Is there a greater volume of kids playing the game? Is there a greater standard? What's been your experience?
Yeah, I think the big thing is the participation. There's more girls actually playing Gaelic football compared to when I was playing. I think, as I say, I played the boys football and there might have been a handful of girls playing. It was usually more of a boys sport, but it's great to see, and I think the standards are getting higher as well, and the skill levels and fitness levels are improving. So it's nice to see, and it's only going to get better, I suppose.
How come Gaelic Games won the battle in your heart over soccer?
It's a tough one. I think it's been my whole life. It's what I've been brought up into from no age, and I think the involvement in club, that community aspect, it doesn't compare then to soccer. Soccer's sort of more of a business-run sport, but I think GAA, it's just the complete love of it. You don't get a lot out of it, more just your own experience. And I think it's just the general love for GAA that was big in our community and big in my family. And I think when I look back, there was only real one outcome, what way it was going to go.
In terms of coaching, what's the stuff that you've kind of kept with you over the years, and what kind of what do you value in a coach now when somebody's giving you feedback on your own performance?
Yeah, I think it's all about listening to the coaches. When I was younger, that's what me and Ian was, that they know more probably than what I know. So it's all about learning from what their experiences were. It's the same as me now. I'm just trying to coach the girls some of my experiences and just general basic skills that we're working on. It's all about improving them. So that's sort of the general aspect of it, and just listening and learning. I'm learning as a coach as well. So it's tougher this side of the pitch. I know that much.
It definitely is, isn't it? It's I'm sure it's much easier just to go out and play. And like, you're still very young, so you still obviously have plenty of years playing ahead of you. There's one other aspect of coaching that I just wanted to ask you about before we talk about the play. It's like resilience and the ability to take defeats and to take setbacks. And you know, obviously you've had experience with some serious injuries as well. So how important is it to talk about those things? How do you coach those things? How do you become prepared, or can you be in any way prepared for suffering serious injuries?
I think it's just accepting it more importantly. You know, we're in this sport, any injury can happen. An injury can happen walking down the street. You know, it's not, you do it more for the love of it. You don't be thinking about the injuries, but I think it's just accepting that it can happen and just get on with it as such. I don't think I looked too much into my injury that I got. It was just, right, it's happened. I just have to get on with it. I think the more you dwell on it, the worse it gets. So nothing was going to change when you get an injury. So it's all about getting your mindset right and focusing on what you have to do. I think it's just your training changes, but it's just adapting and accepting it all.
The other thing, obviously, is some of the goals you scored went viral last year, and that leads to profile, and it also ends up leading to individual awards. So one of the expectations might be that you'll be much more closely marked this year. But the thing is that people have kind of known about you from the time that you were very young. So I guess you've been dealing with pressure and attention pretty much since the very first time that you played senior club football.
Yeah, I suppose I have. It's something, to be honest, I don't really think about. It's not on me. It's not Aimee Mackin versus another county. It's Armagh. So there's 15 players on the field, and each of us have our own jobs to do. Whether I get marked closely or not, that's up to other counties. It's something I don't really think about. I think more about how we perform as a team, more importantly, than how I'm doing as such.
What's been the big ambition from an Armagh point of view then this year, Aimee, to make that step forward, to actually get over the next stage? Obviously, it seems that Armagh are in that cohort of teams that have the talent that is capable of taking down Dublin and capable of bringing the All-Ireland to a different destination. So what have you done in the off-season as a team to try and make that next step?
Well, it was a lot tougher this lockdown, just in terms of having to train on your own. The weather wasn't too great, but we were all sent individual programs, and it was sort of the one aim that we come back to team training in the right shape and the right mindset. But I think this year for us as a team, it's a total new slate. We just go into each competition and each game looking to win it, but we just take each game as it comes, and we don't look too far ahead. But we've youth on our side and that bit of experience too, but we just have to keep learning and keep adapting. Dublin have set the standards within the country to sort of for every county to get up to. So we're just looking to close the gap and just focus on ourselves and look to improve individually, and hopefully that works out helping the team.
When there is a superstar team like Dublin in the sport, it becomes very easy for everybody to be obsessed with trying to develop a style of play to beat them. We see it a lot in the men's game in particular, but actually history would show you the right thing to do is to develop your own style and your own identity and get super good at that, and that's the foundation for you to eventually knock off one of these superpowers. What like, from your own perspective, what do you think is the right way, and what is the Armagh style that you're trying to evolve at the moment?
Well, I don't want to give too much away. No, I'm not joking. I think our style of play is just, we have a lot of forwards that can do a lot of creative things. So it's just all about being creative when you're going forward and sort of be an exciting team. I suppose it's nice to watch when it's sort of fun and enjoyable for ourselves, and that's when you play better. So it's just an attacking team, but also when you're coming up against the likes of Dublin, you have to be wary of the defensive side because every other team in the country has such good forwards as well. So I think it's just focusing, as you say, on ourselves and the style of play when you're coming up against the likes of Dublin. You have to be on your game, and any mistake they're going to punish. So it's all about just taking control of what you can do and trying your best at the end of the day. That's all you can do.
And some supporters allowed back into grounds to watch the matches. What's that been like?
Yeah, it's great. I think we sort of get used to having no one at the games, which isn't nice. I think we all liked our friends and family being there to support us and help us, and even to hear a cheer when the ball goes over the bar in the net or a block. It was just great, and more importantly, it was probably great for the supporters to get out of the house and be able to watch it live. So it's a nice step to take, and hopefully we can start getting more in.
Amy, we wish you the very best of luck with the rest of the season and the coaching over the summer. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
No bother. Thanks very much.
It's Aimee Mackin of Armagh there, and of course, a reminder the LGFA has just announced Glenveigh Homes as the new sponsors of the LGFA's Gaelic for Girls programme. It's an 8-week programme incorporating coaching sessions with fun, non-competitive blitzes aimed at increasing participation in ladies Gaelic football. And Aimee Mackin is an ambassador for Gaelic for Girls. I was just doing a bit of reading about her breakthrough as a teenager for the club team. They got into a league final when she was 13, and she scored 3-8 in the final. As a 13-year-old.
Yeah, and then there was the story then last year. We had Amy on the show after she came back from the cruciate last year, and I think was it 8 goals in her first club game after she came back. So there's an unstoppable force in Armagh. Like, that is a team to watch. They have been a team to that if they're on television, you're the ones that they're the team that you watch at the moment. But whether or not they're the team to actually get over the line, that's probably going to become a reality over the next little while. I know that the Dubs, whenever you speak to them, always talk up Armagh as one of those teams in that collection of counties who can really push forward. And the age profile is pretty good as far as I'm aware in that Armagh team as well. And like, I think last year a lot of people remember that Armagh-Tyrone game being on TV on a Friday night in the Championship, and I think that was not the first moment, because I know there was a great game against Mayo that was on TV the previous summer before the pandemic, but there's just been a couple of those moments where these brilliant Armagh performances have coincided with their appearances on live television, which doesn't hurt.
It's fair to say that the excitement around Aimee Mackin's talent in the women's game is of a similar level to the excitement that there is around David Clifford's talent. Yeah,
it's the like-for-like comparison. She's the leader in the women's game at the moment, the best player in the women's game at the moment, and also playing in a forward position. So you tend to get the highlight reel out of her talent as well, just like you tend to do with David Clifford quite a bit. They also share something in that they will both feel that their career is nowhere near complete until they've won a number of All-Irelands, let alone one All-Ireland. So they've both got to tick those boxes themselves for their own set of fans, I suspect.
Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio over the course of the rest of the day. At 1 o'clock, OTB Gold is Dr. Harry Edwards talking about O.J. Simpson. He was part of that documentary series that won the Oscar for ESPN. The Mount Rushmore today is Cork. Super controversial, if memory serves. Our retro panel is leaders, captains and managers at 4 o'clock, and then OTB Gold is Catherine Switzer, who ran the Boston Marathon in 1967 despite the fact that women weren't allowed to run, and it was a seminal moment in women's sports history. A brilliant interview that is definitely sit in your car to listen to the end of it all the way through with Joe from a couple of years back at this point. So that's OTB Gold at 6 this evening. Up next this morning on OTB AM, we're talking the Ring of Kerry, Euros and tennis.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
Lads, it's official, right? No GAA player was practicing tackling at all during lockdown. They were practicing that dummy bounce. defenders got complacent. They didn't have to mark anyone. Like if you were playing on the full back line, you didn't have to get touch tight, you didn't have to dog a fella because you three your mates standing 10 yards away from you.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
Invisible Threads, a Go Loud original.
As we celebrate the 6th anniversary of marriage equality, Invisible Threads meets older members of the LGBTQ community who reflect on their journeys and tell their stories. From shame and isolation to conversion therapy, from living with fear to coming out as an older person. Join me, James O'Hagan, for this powerful 8-part series, winner of the first Go Loud Podship.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
5 minutes past 9 this morning. You're very welcome back to OTB AM. Now we want to tell you about this because unfortunately for the second year in a row, the annual Ring of Kerry charity cycle has been postponed, and whilst they're hugely disappointed not to be welcoming everybody in person to the finish line on the 3rd of July, they're launching an alternative way for people to take part and support their chosen charities. The Ring of Kerry Alternative Charity Cycle. It's 170k my way. So you can sing it if you want, but ideally you'll cycle it. The money raised will go towards the chosen charities who have really felt the pressure and demand on their services over the past year of the pandemic and have also had their ability to finance those services restricted. And I'm delighted to welcome Anne Reardon of the Irish Heart Foundation to the show. And the Irish Heart Foundation are one of the Ring of Kerry's nominated charities. Good morning to you. How are you getting on?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks a million for this. We really appreciate it.
No, look, it's important because I know at the start of lockdown there were loads of people doing these mammoth things and raising huge amounts of money for important causes, but the long form impact on your sector has been fairly phenomenal, and just the ability to get out and do stuff and shake buckets and all the kind of traditional things that raised awareness but also raised much needed funds are gone. So how important is something like this?
Just so huge. And you said there's been a huge shift in how we fundraise, but there's been a huge shift in how everybody's had to deliver services as well. Everybody had to just transform in the last year, and so many charities really stepped up and filled gaps, and really, met vulnerable people where they were at. And, I think there are so many people that have been so commendable. But the sector has been very hit. But the only thing is people have wanted to be more active, which is so positive. I mean, from the Irish Heart Foundation's point of view, 80% of heart disease, can be preventable. 1 in 3 people die from heart disease or stroke. And just by getting out and getting active can really benefit somebody's overall well-being. And for any, I suppose, health service provider, they'd say the same thing, get out and get active. And more people have been getting out, taking on challenges, which has been fantastic. But this particular event, I've chased for the last 15 years. I wanted to be one of the charities for the last 15 years. I think it's a super event. And on the day, I don't know if you've ever had the chance to do the cycle. Have you?
I haven't done it, Anne, but I've had the pleasure of drinking a few pints in a pub while people have come in with their bikes afterwards. So I've done very important parts, yeah.
Probably one of the best bits of it. But it's just such a spectacular cycle. The vistas are amazing, but it's the camaraderie between everybody. Everybody is just egging everybody else on. And whether you're kind of a 5-hour cyclist or you're there for the whole day, 10 or 12 hours, it's just the most fantastic event. But we've kind of had to reimagine it, and I think launching it tomorrow on World Bike Day is a great idea. We're offering people the chance to cycle, the 170k from the 3rd of June to the 3rd of July, which gives everybody a chance to be included. And whether you cycle to work or go for a 10k cycle in the evening or whatever you do, you can build up your 170k over the month. And I think it's absolutely super. Could really motivate people. And the great thing is, anybody who signs up gets this fabulous t-shirt, and also you get to activate an I Donate page, and on that you can track your virtual journey around the Ring of Kerry. But I was out for a cycle on Saturday along the Shannon Estuary, and I reckon that really competes with the Ring of Kerry.
Right, so it turns out we've got loads of great places, and maybe one of the benefits is that actually people who weren't going to be able to make it down for the actual day or the weekend itself are going to be able to do this right across the country as well. So hopefully, the future probably is a lot of people doing something together, but a virtual element of it around the world as well, and maybe that's for our benefit. Can I just ask you mentioned the services. What have you had to do to make sure that the services you provided were able to continue? And what were the biggest challenges over the last while?
Well, we would have to support people who are living with heart conditions and people who've had stroke. So we actually we have begun a stroke step-down service. We took that over from from other service providers. Anybody who's left the hospital setting, and we're supporting people now who are back in the community. We offer rehabilitation or exercise classes online. We have phone services and then kind of group sessions as well. I've had to sing at a few of them. It's been very scary. But no, there's I suppose we've got our online support groups, and there's a lot of peer-to-peer support in there as well, but that really makes a huge difference. And then our nurse helpline as well, we've had to up that as well. So kind of an awful lot of shifts. But it's been really good. It's made us rethink the way we're delivering our services as well. And I think we're reaching more people this way. People who were left very vulnerable and very frightened and very isolated. And it's been brilliant to be able to meet them. But can I just say, I was lucky enough to be on here today. There's 12 charities benefiting from the Ring of Kerry cycle. The list is on the Ring of Kerry website. There's absolutely super local charities and national charities included. I'm not going to take all the glory today.
No, it's a real mix, and that's I guess the benefit of it is that if people have a particular charity that they want to support, they're going to find something in that list as part of the Ring of Kerry cycle to do it as well. So are you doing the 160, 170k?
I am. I was kind of hoping to do it all in one day, but I don't know if I'll ever. I just haven't had the time to get out and build up the miles. I'm kind of doing about 50k, on a Saturday. So if I can build it up over the next few weeks now, I'll do it over the next few weeks, but I'm going to try and do it all in the one day, maybe at the start of July.
Right, that is pretty impressive. Myself and Tommy have committed to doing the 170k over the course of the month anyway.
Tommy, you're only doing it up in Ennis. That's too flat up there. You can't do it up there.
It's true. It's a good point. The thing about this, Anne, is that come next year, there's going to be the biggest waiting list of all time for the Ring of Kerry cycle, because bike shops are firing bikes out like it's Christmas Eve every single day. Everybody's got up on a bike over the last year and a half. This is there's been a boom during lockdown in the sport. So I don't know, they'll have to do it over 2 weekends or something next year and do 2 Ring of Kerry cycles.
I know, and do you know, that actually reminds me of something I wanted to say. I actually bought my husband a bike and he came out over the handlebars. Road safety is really important. And I think as more people get moving around the country now, just be conscious. We've been enjoying the roads to ourselves there for the last few months.
Yeah.
But I think there'll be a lot more motorists on the road, and I suppose we have to remember that rules of the road apply when we're out cycling. So just remember to take care. And I think most people I know that cycle are kind of members of some group and they have insurance, but you can get insurance through Cycling Ireland, and it's kind of worth looking into. It's not expensive. But I think road safety is very important. And just in case I don't have a chance to say it as well, I just want to say, just remember the huge benefits of cycling. It's low impact sport. Any age can do it. It's great for the core, good for balance. And I think the other great thing is once you have a bike, it's free. You have a very low carbon footprint. But once you're exercising, once you're doing any exercise, you're releasing those happy endorphins and just elevating the mood. And that's really important, if you're sitting at your desk for hours like me.
No, you're exactly right. And I just wanted to point out that it was quite noticeable that I had said that myself and Tommy were doing it. And then Eoin had great information about the bike shops throwing the bikes out like it's Christmas Eve, because recently he was in a bike shop. Mm-hmm. Now, he has not yet committed to doing this.
But I didn't realise that it was a full month, Anne. So I'm all on board if it's full month. So Tommy and Ger came to me with the proposition that was like, we'll do this over the course of 1 weekend. I'm like,
well, no, a real man would do it over the 1 weekend.
Well, that's it. But I'm not at your level now at all, doing 50k in one cycle. But I'll get there one day. But that day is not going to come at any point in the next month. It's very unfortunate that I have to break that news. But Ger and Tommy, they are flying. There's 2 Lance Armstrongs here in Team OTB in many ways.
Lance Armstrong.
In many ways.
Dan Martin or somebody.
2 Dan Martins, and they're gonna do to be honest with you, I think that the way they've been talking about it would be conducive to them actually doing it in the one day, the 170 kilometres. They've been at it now for the last couple of years, and they've got so much training in over the past 24 months, basically, that it would be rude if they didn't do it in the one day. And as you say, sure, Tommy's on a flat road there up in Ennis.
Where's Owen going to? Where's Joe going to do it?
Joe, are you going to do it?
I'm going to do up Howth. You know, there's plenty of hills up Howth, but it's not far enough, so I'll have to work something out.
You can actually, the Midlands, there's fabulous cycles around the Midlands, and a couple of guys went off from Tala last year. They were raising some money for us, and they did 150k. They just went out to the Midlands. There's some lovely tours around there.
The Leinster Loop is the one that people do there as well, which obviously runs through with High. So, look, absolutely. It turns out you've managed to guilt Eoin into doing it, because normally he hates charity, and so fair play to you for convincing him.
We'll want to hear updates now, lads.
No problems. ringofkerrycycle.ie and Anne Reardon from the Irish Heart Foundation. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. 3 budding cyclists there doing their bit. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It's a virtual cycle around the Ring of Kerry, 170k. You got a full month to do it. And you can get all the details at ringofkerrycycle.ie. It is 15 minutes past 9. Time for us to get into our second Euros cheat sheet of the morning. We need another 90-second timer. It is Slovakia.
It is Slovakia. Yes, indeed. Let's do it. So, Slovakia, they have only ever played in 2 tournaments as an independent nation. They made it to the round of 16 at the 2010 World Cup, and they also made it to the round of 16 at the last Euros. So, they finished 3rd in their qualifying group for this tournament behind Croatia and Wales. But as we all know, the Nations League playoffs came along to provide the platform for qualifying. They beat the Republic of Ireland 4-2 on penalties and then beat Northern Ireland after extra time. Now, a victory in a playoff match as Ireland manager might get you a statue on O'Connell Street, but in Slovakia they sacked their manager Pavel Hapal 8 days after that penalty shootout win. Stefan Tarkovic is the new guy in charge of the team, and he comes into the gig with a pretty low profile, a Wikipedia page that is 3 sentences long, to be precise. Slovakia's midfield is looking pretty impressive in general, but Marek Hamšík is still their most notable player if you were to pick one. He has shown serious dedication to the national team and even greater dedication to that hairstyle, and he's now rather randomly playing for Gothenburg and is the biggest star in the Swedish league since Zlatan. He's gone there to get his fitness up in a summer league, basically, after China proved to be worth nothing more than an absolutely enormous wage packet, and he is back in Europe. So let's have a look at the kits. First of all, that home kit, a lot is happening in that home kit there. All of the brain power of the Slovakian kit makers clearly went into making that jersey, because if you look at the away jersey, no thought went into it at all. It is the plainest jersey in the history of the European Championships. That is your cheat sheet in Slovakia.
The plain one looks nice. The away one looks like it's a bit of a disaster. So tell me, Slovakia, any good?
They're okay. Like, their, as I say, manager got sacked, not necessarily as a result of beating Ireland in the playoff. They lost a couple of Nations League games in that week. They got relegated to League C in the Nations League. Ireland technically in a higher place than them in the Nations League, as it turns out. Israel, Scotland, Czech Republic all finished ahead of them in that league. Then in the World Cup qualifications, they drew at Cyprus, drew at Malta, but then randomly beat Russia in their 3rd game in qualifying, and then drew 1-1 in a friendly with Bulgaria last night. So they're not great. Now, the team that we played was a weakened version of the team that'll go to the Euros. Obviously, there was a few COVID cases. The Serie A players were weirdly insulated, if you might remember. At that point, they didn't want to be travelling to and from Slovakia from Italy at that point, but they'll have them back for the Euros. So if you go from back to front, they'll have Martin Dubravka of Newcastle in goals. They'll have Milan Skriniar back at centre-back. Obviously, he wasn't around for that Ireland game. He's been an ever-present in the Inter Milan defence all season. And really, he is Slovakia's best player. Hamšík is the most famous one, but Skriniar is their best player. Michal Duris scored the winner versus Northern Ireland. He's probably going to lead the line up front. And then, as I said earlier on, the midfield is everything with this team. They've got Hamšík in there, they've got Kuka in there, and they've got Stanislav Lobotka in there, the Napoli player, who got his tonsils out recently, but is back on the field of play. The most expensive Slovakian footballer in history after joining Napoli for over £20 million from Celta Vigo last year. The prediction, though, for Slovakia is that they will finish bottom of this group and go home, and that will be it from a Slovakian standpoint. It's hard. This is the one country that I'm finding it hard to make a case for an upset from their perspective. I think I'd be almost certain they finish last.
Okay, that is the stuff with Slovakia. Big breaking news this morning when it comes to how we're going to be consuming the Champions League in Ireland over the next 3 seasons. Up till this point, you'll be familiar with the fact that Tuesday nights were RTE, Wednesday nights were Virgin, and everything else. Virgin had everything apart from the one game that was on RTE. RTE have kept their rights essentially, and they've added the Champions League final as the domestic terrestrial TV broadcaster, Virgin announced a couple of months ago that they weren't going to be getting a renewal of these rights. It has emerged that those rights have gone to Live Score, the Live Score app that you use to get live scores. They've been streaming La Liga. They've done a deal with La Liga in recent seasons. And so every single game in the Champions League from August will be available to watch on the Live Score app, free to air for users in Ireland. This deal commences at the start of the 2021-2022 season. And the press release is just coming through. So everybody's kind of trying to understand exactly what it means. I think there's a bit of confusion because I'm not sure. I'm not sure about whether or not they say you can cast it to your TV, right? So, but you know the way if you try and cast Sky Go, you can't cast that. So, this is going to be very interesting. Essentially, users will be able to watch the matches on their mobile or tablet devices with the further option to cast the action to their TV screens. So those of you who have invested in big screen TVs will hopefully be able to get them. And again, the importance of HD, like broadcasting football in HD has been a transformative moment for football broadcasts in recent years, and that was one of the best parts about being able to watch the games on Virgin as well. There was no diminution in the quality of the output. But look, Live Score have the UEFA Champions League, every single match in the Champions League for the territory of Ireland for the next 3 seasons.
It completely shakes things up. Like, you will be able to cast to your TV screen, it says on the statement that's come in this morning. Like, I think people have just already got used to dealing with their sports content in a very different way. Like, I can't imagine there are too few listeners this morning who don't use Now, for example, as their main means of getting sports content. And that is the very same process, really, like actually signing up and thinking about how am I going to cast this, what devices am I using it for, potentially using it on your smart TV or on your Apple TV. This is just the next step on that. And I'm not going to lie, I haven't watched any La Liga on Live Score. I knew they were carrying it for the last while and pushing it big over the last little while, but I actually haven't watched it, so I'm not sure what the user experience is like, but I presume it's very good. And yeah, like free to air as well is a bit of a shake-up, because I guess unless you were a Virgin customer, you weren't necessarily getting the stuff for free. You probably needed to have BT in Ireland over the last few years to actually get your Champions League content. Okay. All of it, that is.
Okay, so this is interesting. So Live Score say that 33 games are non-exclusive. RTE have half of those. So presumably the other half are Wednesday night games, which means that there will be other games on TV.
Mm-hmm. There will be another partner, I presume.
That's what it sounds like.
TV station will have the Wednesday game.
Tuesday, TV games, RTE, and the final. Broadcaster, as yet unidentified, have Wednesday games, and all the games will be on Live Score, whereas previously all the Wednesday games and all the games were on Virgin and on various of their channels. So this is going to be very interesting, isn't it?
Absolutely. So who will be in the market for that Wednesday game then?
I guess RTE, Virgin, TG Car.
So does that exclude BT? Can BT dip their toe in the market here around Champions League wise, like they do with their 12:30 on a Saturday Premier League game?
I don't know. Maybe they can. Maybe it doesn't have to be terrestrial, so it could be Premier Sports.
Yeah, that's certainly not. Like, it's just that Virgin already ruling themselves out. We know that their sport aren't going to be around in the distant future. I'm just trying to think what are the actual options at this point, unless there's something that we're not actually thinking of here. And like this is going to become the norm now, really, isn't it? That things like Live Score, Amazon are going to be as important as what your contract is with your television company.
I mean, this is free to air, they're saying, so you won't have to pay for this. Obviously, there'll be a lot of ads and a lot of pre-roll and a lot of mid-roll, but sure, look, that's what we're used to. Will there be any studio around it? Will the commentators be the World Feed commentators? More than likely, that's what you would expect. This is pretty interesting. Obviously, the economics of it stack up from Live Score's perspective. Somewhere on an Excel sheet, somewhere it makes sense for them, and it makes more sense for them than it did for the existing broadcasters. So look, I mean, it's definitely a very interesting evolution and development, and it will be really interesting to see where those other games are going on the Wednesday night. Maybe RTE go back in and try and get those as well, so they've got Tuesday and Wednesday night. Again, you'd have to wonder about the merits of the taxpayer picking up the bill from UEFA for that when there was another player in the market who was interested in them. So this is the story with Live Score.
Yeah, so like, I mean, like, nobody would have thought this a few years ago when they were using Live Score. When people started using Live Score instead of Flash Score for their updates on 3 o'clock games on a Saturday afternoon, nobody thought that this would be the end product of Live Score. Like, maybe with Amazon you could have made a case, if they can do anything, they now deliver your shopping, they can absolutely tap into any market they like. With Live Score, I'm not sure, even though they're literally a football corporation, I'm not sure anybody necessarily saw that coming. Obviously, since they started to do La Liga in the past little while, this was going to be one of the next steps. But it's interesting how they've built this up to being a commercially viable company who can do something like this, because these rights ain't cheap. As you say, there will more than likely be a lot of ads to do with it, which are probably going to pay for the rights they're spending on this. But for a non-subscription fee, I'd imagine people who are in the know would tell you that those things don't come cheap.
Yeah, look, it's going to be very interesting to see how people use it as well, because you'll be watching the Live Score app on your phone or you'll be casting it to your TV. Like, one of the joys of Champions League night was flicking between games. So, like, I don't know how, when I cast, it's a bit of a pain. The phone has to recognise the TV. It takes 60 seconds. There's not much room to be flicking.
I personally am beyond the point of casting at this point. I think that I'm not sure do I speak for everyone there, but I definitely think the Apple TV apps and your smart TV apps are just so much more user-friendly than casting. Because as you say, you got to X out.
So Live Score need a live TV app then?
It would be, I think, a far better user experience. As I say, I haven't used the La Liga aspect that they've had over the last while, but I definitely think so. Maybe it's me being, maybe it's like, personally, I'm the type of person who would prefer to use my WhatsApp web rather than on my phone, so I just hate texting and stuff like that. So maybe that's just me, and just hating to go into cast and go on my phone rather than actually having something on your TV. I'm sounding very quickly like an old man right now.
So you prefer on your TV, your TV to be the TV?
Yeah, rather than fiddling around on my phone. Then,
Grandpa Simpson here.
What?
26 minutes past 9. This is OTB AM, and look, this is a story you're going to hear a lot more about. And again, it's not fully finished. We don't know who's got those Wednesday night games for broadcast. According to the Live Score press release, there is definitely some games that they have non-exclusive rights to, half of which have already been assigned or claimed by RTE. So we'll see exactly where the rest of those games are going over the next while. If you want to get in touch this morning, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Colm Boohig, good morning to you.
Morning, Jar. Morning, Eoin.
We're a bit late to this because the breaking news about the Live Score having the Champions League rights, so we're going to have to fly through a little bit of this. But you're here to talk tennis and the French Open. And the way this works is it's 15 love, 30 love, 40 love, game, set, match. What's our 15 love point?
Well, it's Naomi Osaka, and I suppose the question is what happens from here. So first of all, to point to our own Stephen Doyle, who wrote a great opinion piece on the Osaka withdrawal and the treatment by the media towards her and basically the bullying. So it's a great piece. I recommend people go on otbsports.com to read it. And what it leaves me thinking is, because it's been 2 days now, and I'm wondering what happens now. The 4 Grand Slams came back out and released a statement after Osaka withdrew and said, they wish her the best and a speedy recovery, almost like it's a physical injury. And they said, we're going to do our best to improve the conditions for players at Grand Slams. But what does that mean? That's so vague. I mean, that's like the European super clubs after the chaos of that and the shambles of it, saying, we'll communicate better with fans. But what does that mean on a practical level? So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Osaka and whether she plays this summer. It's a really busy summer of tennis. You have Wimbledon, you have the Olympics, you have the US Open. And does this mean that she's taking time away and going to get her head right and prepare for the press conferences in order to be able to do them? Or does it mean that she's going to basically pick and choose the ones that she wants to do? But I think the big lesson for everybody this week is that, like, depression is ubiquitous, but it's also deeply personal to the person affected. And once Osaka said that she's been suffering from depression intermittently since the US Open in 2018 when she won her first Grand Slam, in that tumultuous match against Serena Williams, I think the discussion was over, and I can't believe there's even been a debate since then, because she's a human being suffering from mental illness and she needs time away. And the only debate for me now is what happens next. And, you know, it's no point speculating about what Osaka's going to do next, because only she knows really. But I wouldn't be too surprised if she skipped Wimbledon and waited until the hard court season resumes in order to go back playing and feel comfortable. But as Stephen Doyle actually said in the article too, tennis itself is her sanctuary. It's getting to and from the court that's the problem for Osaka at the moment.
And one of the things I think this is kind of like thrown up, I know the story has moved on quite a bit over the last couple of days, is just sort of the pressure she feels then away from the court. And again, Stephen kind of touched on this in his article, the lack of comfort that sports stars have in arenas that aren't their sport. Maybe we don't quite appreciate that enough, that speaking to a microphone for 15 minutes or however long a press conference lasts with a room full of people, maybe to us seems like the easiest thing in the world, but to her, playing tennis is the thing that's the thing that comes easy to her. And maybe we're only coming around to that sort of realisation this week, and that's being hammered home a little bit more. And also the idea that this is an individual sport. Like, there's no hiding place afforded to an individual when it comes to these dealings. There's no teammates who can go out and face the music after a bad performance or do the media when they're having an off day.
Yeah, well, she's not a public speaker, and I mean, she never asked to be, and she's very uncomfortable with it. And I mean, the suspicion was, when this all started about a week ago, when Osaka said that she wasn't going to do any press at the French Open, the suspicion was that, well, she has a very poor record on clay. She's never gone beyond her third round of the French Open. And in the warm-up tournaments to Roland Garros, she lost in the last 32 of the Madrid Open and lost in the first round of the Italian Open to Jessica Pegula. And she was in a really bad way after that. And her sister, her older sister Marie, took to Reddit to explain that Osaka was really down on herself after that latter loss, because she herself feels that she's not good enough on clay, and everybody's telling her that. So we thought it was all a bit superficial, in that it was, she just isn't good on clay, she's not very confident, and so she doesn't want to answer questions about it. But obviously, it's so much more than that. And the surface of the tennis court is tiny in terms of what's going on overall at Osaka's head. But I think she's already a hero for young people. She's a role model. But I think the biggest take from this is, she said she's suffering from depression since the US Open in 2018. She won 3 Grand Slams after that. Like, she's an amazing person, and she should be championed. And I hope to see her again very soon.
Okay, there's a much bigger story there that we probably don't have enough time to do justice to this morning. So let's move on rather than spend any more on that. We've got a couple of minutes left. The big three are back. That's our 30 love point.
Yeah, so for the first time in a long time, Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal are all playing in the same Grand Slam tournament. And they're actually all on the same side of the draw, because Daniil Medvedev, the Russian, who's had a fantastic last 6 months, he won the season-ending ATP finals in November, and he got to the final of the Australian Open, obliterated everybody until he met Djokovic in the final. Well, he's number 2 seed at the French Open, so that means Djokovic and Nadal are either side of him, and that means that they can only play each other in the semi-final. So there won't be a repeat of last year's final, which was only in October, of course, between Nadal and Djokovic. And the mouth-watering prospect is that because Federer is seeded 8, it means that if he wins all his matches and Djokovic wins all his matches, they will play each other at the quarterfinal next Wednesday. And that is also the same day, the 9th of June, where the crowds increase from 1,000 on the main court on Philippe Chatrier to 5,000. So that could be an unbelievable occasion. For Federer, he's just come back. He's played a couple of warm-up tournaments. He looks pretty sluggish, to be honest. He's played the Qatar Open, the Geneva Open. He won only 1 match in those 2 tournaments, but he did win his first round here against Denis Istomin, and he won it in straight sets. He plays Marin Cilic next. It would be an incredible story, like Federer. He's still level with Rafa Nadal on the most Grand Slams ever won at 20, but he turns 40 in August. You'd say, like, if he's going to win another one, if he's going to get to 21, you'd fancy him at Wimbledon, and that's it. And obviously, if Nadal goes all the way here, he will not alone win his 14th Grand Slam, or 14th French Open, which is the same number of Grand Slams that Pete Sampras won in total, but he'll also win his 21st. And then you have Novak Djokovic, who, if he wins at the French Open this year, he'll be the first man since Rod Laver in 1969 to win every Grand Slam at least twice. So history beckons for these 3 lads, and I hope that they go as far as they can. But on the other side, it leaves the draw open, so there will be a first-time French Open finalist, and it's looking likely to be Stefanos Tsitsipas, the young Greek. because Medvedev's record on the French, despite being seeded number 2, is absolutely atrocious. His first round victory earlier this week was the very first match he's ever won at the French Open.
All right, okay. That's a bit random. He's number 2 then. Okay, Serena's big summer as well, also chasing a record and trying to expunge one of sport's most unsavoury characters. So what happens here?
It's so hard to call, lads, like the women's draw. I mean, the last player on the WTA side to retain the French Open was Justine Henin in 2007. She actually won it 3 years in a row. So no one's retained it since then, and there's been a different winner every single year. The last time Serena won it was 2015. But she does have a little bit of a chance here, just because Garbine Muguruza, the 2016 champion, she's out. Elena Ostapenko, the 2017 champion, she's gone. Simona Halep is injured, so she didn't play this year. Petra Kvitova had a freak incident. She got injured after her press conference after the first round and had to withdraw from the tournament. She's gone. Bianca Andreescu's gone. So it does open the door for her, but she has 2 big problems in front of her, Serena, and that's Iga Swiatek, the defending champion, who won the Italian Open, the warm-up before the French Open, 6-love in the final against Karolina Pliskova. She's looking very dangerous. And then you have Ash Barty, of course, the world number 1 and seeded number 1, who never got to defend her French Open title last year because she didn't travel to Paris due to the pandemic. She won the French Open in 2019. So if Serena's going to do it, she has to really surpass those 2. But what a story it would be. But again, like Federer, I'd fancy Serena more on Wimbledon, and she also turns 40 in September. So it's really the summer for Federer and Serena.
Yeah,
it'll be really interesting to see what
it's
happens.
very unlikely. I think very long odds that either of them win. And match points?
Just shout out to Carla Suarez Navarro, who she's a 32-year-old Spaniard. She's a perennial kind of quarterfinalist at the Grand Slams. She was diagnosed with cancer only last September, just before the US Open. She was receiving chemotherapy as recently as the start of this year, and she entered this year's French Open. She actually had a brilliant match against Sloane Stephens, who's a former finalist at Roland Garros. It went all the way. Navarro actually served for the match, but she lost. But it's an amazing story. She'd originally planned to retire in 2020, but then she got ill and then the pandemic happened, so she wanted to have her full swan song. She's recovered from cancer. She tweeted at the end of April that she was cancer-free. That was her last ever French Open match. Because of the scheduling, it's really poor scheduling, the French Open. There was no fans because there's a 9 p.m. curfew in Paris. So she walked off the court to nobody. But she got reams and reams of farewells and great praise online because she's an extremely popular player on the tour. She'll play throughout the summer. She'll play Wimbledon, the Olympics and the US Open, but this is her final year. But it was a great story from a player who was much loved, and like to recover from that illness in that time and play a competitive match against a brilliant player like Sloane Stephens is a brilliant story, and much needed for tennis this week.
No,
much
totally.
Needed.
Look, there's a couple of other stories we'll get to the next time we have you on next week properly, when we have plenty of time and there isn't breaking news about live scores coming through. So good stuff, Colm. Thanks a million for that. Cheers.
Cheers, lads. It's
9:37 this morning. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. I just want to say that Mike Quirk is our next guest. He's speaking with Joe last night, and we're delighted to say that the Mike Quirk podcast is now part of the OTB podcast network. You can get it in the GEA feed, or you can subscribe to it on the OTB Sports app, and we'll ping you a little notification when the new episodes go up. Here's Joe and Mike.
Now, so something a little bit different to tell you about. There's a new podcast series kicking off here on Off the Ball. It's the Mike Quirk podcast. Best place to get it is on the Off the Ball app. It's free in your app store, the app that is. So search OTB Sports. You'll find it there. Houses all our content, including the Mike Quirk podcast, which kicked off today. And there'll be a new episode up every Tuesday. And conveniently enough, Mike Quirk is on the line. How you doing?
Good, Joe. How are you?
I'm very well. So this is pretty exciting. I know you've spoken to a whole bunch of interesting people, a real eclectic mix. How would you explain the podcast or sell the podcast, or what was the motivation behind it?
I suppose the motivation was simple. The motivation was as a fundraiser for Temple Street Children's Hospital. I had one lad in Temple Street about 10 years ago. I suppose the day after he was born, I had twins. And we were up in Temple Street for several weeks, and it looked very bleak for a spell, and then thankfully everything turned around, and everything's great, and that's obviously down to the skill and expertise and unbelievable care that they provide to families all over Ireland. Obviously every day of the week when somebody else leaves, somebody else is in there, and I hadn't really done anything, and I just thought with the timing that we had around the pandemic and everybody having a little bit of extra time, I thought it'd be a good way to see if I could link the two. So I wanted to I thought it was probably a novel way to start off that podcast idea by tapping into maybe some of the context that I would have had in coaching and management and sport and different things, and see if we could just kind of mix the whole thing into to do something worthwhile, both for kids and coaches to benefit from, and then also on the other end to get people to donate a little bit of money to the fundraiser for Temple Street.
Good man. So a belated thank you.
Yeah, well, it's still going. It's still open. I think that's the beauty of it. Yeah, we're trying to keep pushing that throughout these episodes as well. So I think hopefully this will help it reach a lot more ears, and as it's been going, the more people that listen, the more people that tend to donate. So it's for a very kind of benevolent cause, I suppose, really, and they're the ones that are benefiting most from it.
Good man. And if people want to make a donation, do you give out those details on the podcast? You do?
I do. I give out the details, and they'll find it on my Twitter page at Mike Quirk. And it's a fundraising page that I've set up directly, and everything there that's raised obviously goes to Temple Street.
Good man. When did you say all this happened? Did you say 10 years ago?
Yeah, initially it was 10. Yeah, they're 10 since February. Yeah, scary thing. And I was just. So you become a dad for the first time, obviously, and twins, which is crazy in itself. And they came several weeks early, and I was in the hospital all day. I remember vividly like it was yesterday. And small, nice little pub down here in Tralee called Betty's. I eventually got there with a few of my good friends about maybe 10:30 at night. I'd put in the long stint, and we had heard nothing all day. Everything was good, and suddenly my phone started ringing, and back up to the hospital. And before I knew it, I was on my way to Temple Street the following day, following an ambulance as my wife was in hospital in Tralee, staying with Cameron, my other son, and scary stuff. Really, really scary stuff for anybody. And you've no idea. I know we're all conscious of Temple Street, Joe. I've always been conscious of it, but we don't have any clue. We're spending weeks above there in ICU, which is the sickest of the sick children in Ireland, and to see. You talk about people who are working, these nurses and doctors who are just, it's insane the workload that they have and the care that they give people and the kind of empathy that they show. And I know that's their job and it's a vocation and it's whatever, but I just, it's frightening when you're in that situation and the care they show you, and then that they depend so much on fundraising efforts and people, being so generous with their money, as we Irish people always tend to be to these good causes. And so, yeah, look, anything that people can spare is obviously very appreciated, and it's going to a very worthy cause.
Yeah, I had no idea. Gee, so that drive behind the ambulance with your wife behind in Tralee as you head for Dublin, what's your memory of that?
I had a good friend of mine, to be fair, came with me, took off work.
Okay. And that is a good friend. That's not a drive you want to do on your own.
No. And I remember the lady, the nurse, who was with the ambulance, who was dealing with him and bringing him into the ambulance. She just said, "Look, can I give you one piece of advice? Don't follow us. Don't try and stay behind us, because if there's any kind of a slowdown at all, we're just going to turn on the lights and go by it. And obviously, if you see that, you might think that there's something going on. But look, just don't follow us." But sure, like every stupid father who's trying to, learn his way, I followed the ambulance as far as I could until we got to somewhere near a dare, and suddenly there's a traffic jam, and these people are gone past everybody. And it's a frightening thing now when you go up and you see your kid inside with about 20 or 30 different wires and tubes coming out of him, and me not being somebody who's overly comfortable in hospitals or needles or anything like that. So it's crazy. And to think like how small he was at the time, and the operation that they had to do on his esophagus, it doesn't bear thinking about the skill and the expertise that these people actually have on a human that's actually as small as they're dealing with. And look, again, I know other people, loads of people have stories, Joe, and there was such sad cases up there that time, and families are trying to, in one sense, help each other out, and then in another sense you're trying to keep yourself to yourself, because while you might be after getting good news or bad news, somebody else is after hearing the opposite, and it's a very tough place to be. And I just think, some of the stuff then you'd see up there, Joe, the nurses having to try and leave their shift to let the next shift of nurses park in the car space because they didn't have enough parking, and then they were trying to pay for parking outside, and some of the building was needed to be renovated because they didn't have the equipment and different things. And it's just it's a sin in one sense that we as a country have to rely on the fundraising efforts of people to give them all the help that they need, because we should be they're the one crowd, and every people obviously in that kind of medical profession should not have to be looking for money from the generosity of others.
No, they should be the best resourced of anybody. Yeah. So how long did that whole saga go on for then? Was it weeks or days or?
Yeah, it was just a few weeks. Yeah, it was about. Okay. I think maybe about 3 weeks later or so we were heading back down, and now the 3 weeks probably felt like about 6 months or 6 years, to be honest. And every day was a different kind of a story, and there was different bits and pieces, and everything had gone well, and we were told there was no problem, everything was going to be great after the operation, and suddenly you get a call and you're told he's not going to see out the next hour, and
you got that call?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So we were told, obviously, while the operation was going on, look, you can't go in, you can't be there. There's no point waiting in the waiting room because it's going to go on for like 6-7 hours or whatever it was. So we were walking away downtown, myself and my friend John, and got a call from the surgeon to say, listen, everything's after going great, no problems, everything's perfect. He's going to be in recovery, and you'll be able to see him in maybe 2 or 3 hours or whatever. So we actually went into the Oval Bar down the end of O'Connell Street, and just ordered a drink just out of, I don't think we were even drinking. It was just to kind of settle ourselves. And I'd say we hadn't ordered the drink, and my phone rang to say, no, you need to actually get here now. Something's gone wrong, and unlikely to see out the next hour. So it was that kind of frantic. And then suddenly, within that night, he got stronger, and the next day, and now he's running around the place kicking ball and breaking windows, and doesn't even recall any of this stuff happening, and I suppose, again, it leaves you with that kind of thing, Joe. If there's anything at all you can do then to help out these people,
sure.
You're willing to ask people the favors, and ask the people that I asked to go on the podcast and do this thing, and everybody, like when you hear Temple Street, everybody's more than willing to help out in any way they can,
Yeah. God, no idea what happened. Yeah, wow.
No, it's bonkers.
One last one, without being too profound about the whole thing or having to find some kind of learning or meaning in the whole thing. Do you think the experience left a mark on you, left an impact on you, or did you quickly, as I suspect lots of us would do after saying, I'll never take things for granted again, did you quickly revert to taking things for granted again, or did it leave some kind of a mark on you?
I think when you're told like that, look, it's very unlikely that your son or any daughter or any child will see out the next hour, and if they do, it's unlikely they'll get through the night. Like it does leave a mark. Like it does, because you have that deeper kind of appreciation, I think, like of the fact that they're here now and are so full of joy and full of everything themselves, and it does really then as well, I think, just leave you with such an appreciation for the skill and the care and the help that they show you in these places. And again, like, I know, like, you see people on the street and they may be banging a bucket and collecting money for Temple Street, and we're kind of going, listen, come on, lads, people have lost their jobs, we don't have, like, and they rely on this kind of funding, like, which is so crazy themselves, and Crumlin and all these incredible, I'm sure there's people all over. I can remember a family, and I wouldn't go into the details, but like, I was doing my best at the time, Joe, to try and not engage with the other families, because I knew there was some tough stories up there, and when our story started to turn a little bit, it looked like we were going to be one of the good stories, like, to get to leave the hospital again and with our child in a really healthy place. And there was other stories that were not going to be in that way. And I can remember my wife came up and like, so straight away, she wasn't there a day, and she had the story of this other family, and we shared their story. And suddenly now I was linked to these people because I was the one that was staying there all the time. And it's tough, especially then when you see these other people who don't get the kind of news that you're lucky enough to get. And yet the staff that are there just deal with everybody in a kind of a way that, that you couldn't ask for anymore, really. And again, we were just really fortunate. And again, that was probably that was the main motivation behind all this, really, Joe. I hadn't done anything. My wife had done a mini marathon every year and raised a couple, that bit of money every year. So I just wanted to do something with that, with that time to put it as best use as I could.
Okay, well, listen, good man. I'm so glad it all worked out. My God, you'd still be dealing with the fallout of that, I'd say, if things had gone another way. And you think of those other parents. So the Mike Quirk podcast, and the first episode has gone up today on the OTB Sports app. So you've got some brilliant names here. I'm flicking through some of the names. So Russ Bradford is the first name who's on today. We'll come back to him in a second, but flicking through, you've got Patrick Harding, who is a performance coach in the world of Formula One. I don't know if you've been watching Drive to Survive, but suddenly we're all into our Formula One again. You've got Ray Boyne as well. People will know him from the world of GA and analysis. Barry Solon over at Arsenal for many years, the Mayo man. You have Anne Downey, needs no introduction. And then you've got some other interesting people whose names wouldn't jump off the page to me, but reading about them. So like an Alan Ringland, who's in the Munster Technological University, spent 14 years working as psychologist for Paralympics Ireland. And he talks about things like deliberate play as opposed to deliberate practice and so on. You've got Joe O'Connor on strength and conditioning, Nick Potter, high performance at Duke basketball. You've got Derek McGrath. We know him obviously from hurling. And on it goes. Bernard Jackman, I would think he'd be very interesting. Jason Sherlock. So a lot of really good names here. I mean, are you saying to them, guys, help me out here? Give me, help me. How did you pick all these names?
It was random enough, really. There was a few of them that I thought I'd love to just pick their brains. I mean, selfishly, like on top of it then as well, Joe, obviously you have the fundraiser side of it. And then I was saying, well, like how could we actually do something that might kind of help impact coaches, that will filter down and impact kids? Like I heard your talk with the Taoiseach recently, and I thought it was brilliant the way, the questions about the sport and how we can really impact kids in terms of PE and their time in sport. And I thought this was a kind of a similar theme, like that if you can help coaches to do what they do better, and I'm not talking about in terms of, it's not all high performance stuff, it's not anything about inter-county or elite sport. There's bits of that stuff there, of course, but it's all about kind of how can you take that information and impact, if you're working with kids, if you're a parent working with your own children or whatever it is. And some of the stuff, I thought some of the nuggets that came out like were just fantastic. Like Russ is obviously, this week, and Russ would have been a guy who would have coached us in Three Tigers with the basketball. He would have coached in University of Texas El Paso with Lou Henson and Don Haskins. And Don Haskins, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Glory Road, but it's a movie about this white coach who goes into UTEP in Texas El Paso back when things were incredibly race divided and racist, I suppose to call it in a better way. And he won a national basketball championship with first time ever with 5 black players starting on the team. And he coached, he coached with this guy years later, obviously, but he coached with him, and some of the stuff that he has there. And I thought Jason was brilliant. And, you mentioned Patrick Harding, like we were glued to that Drive to Survive program. And this guy features in the program, like he's in the program, and he's obviously, he works with Michael Conlon as well. He's Michael Conlon's performance coach, and great guy. And there's loads of them. David Power there from the golf club in Tralee, a guy that people wouldn't be familiar with, but obviously played collegiate golf over in the States and came home, and just talking about like coaching individuals in a game like golf as opposed to the traditional team sports that we'd all kind of talk about. But no, it was just it was great, and people were so giving of their time. Again, Joe, I suppose that the fact that it's towards generating money for Temple Street, and then also towards helping coaches to filter that information down to kids and ultimately keep people playing sport, keep people being physically active, and not have the kind of dropout numbers that we have in sports and across the board, and especially in girls. And I think if you can do that, then it would be a very worthwhile experience,
And Mike, were there any nuggets that stayed with you, not to put you on the spot too much?
There was a lot, to be honest. I was writing notes every day, Joe. I was taking stuff down. I thought like Barry Solon in Arsenal was brilliant with some of the stuff that he came out with. I mean, like this guy is working in professional sport, and the same with Patrick Harding, Bernard Jackman. These guys are working with like top level, like international athletes, and they talk about just the basics and keeping things as simple as possible. Patrick talks a lot about the kind of the mental side of it, and Alan Ringland does a huge amount of that as well with the Paralympic side of it, and then speaks about how I suppose all of us can have those little basic kind of mental little tricks and traits to help keep us focused on what we're trying to do and different things. There was just loads, Joe. I thought one of the best talks I had was with Joe O'Connor, and Joe, obviously people would know him from, his physical training with Clare and with Limerick, and he's involved now with Equestrian Ireland and different things. And Joe put up a graph. I can't think of the who was the person that did the research, but it was about Mount Stupid. About these people basically maybe on social media or on somewhere else who they do a weekend course and they're certified and the difference between certified and qualified and how that small little bit of information and people really blast that out there and put it out there and these are the people that occupy Mount Stupid. It's a very interesting kind of a chat about the prevalence of that and how social media kind of gives people a loud hailer to use a small bit of information to propel themselves into a different kind of an atmosphere, I suppose. But a lot of really interesting stuff, loads for coaches, parents, teachers, anybody that's got any kind of a passing interest in sport. I mean, Nick Potter, I don't know if you heard of Nick Potter. Nick Potter, is director of high performance, at Duke basketball, working with Coach K, the winningest coach in collegiate basketball history in the States, and worked with your Zion Williamson, your Jason Tatum, your Kyrie Irving, all these guys. Works with had worked with Peyton Manning and Eli Manning, who NFL fans would be familiar with, and gives all the details, the intricate details of how they run their practice. It's that one is probably a little bit more science based, but still, hugely fascinating because of the people that he's speaking to. And if you're of any interest in American sports, he's a guy that you'd find very interesting. So. There was loads, and I wouldn't like to be leaving out too many people because I found all of them very interesting, and I got something out of every one of them,
Okay, geez, sounds great. So, as I said, first one drops today. That's Russ Bradford coaching from Texas to Tralee, and then on we go with all these names every Tuesday in the OTB Sports app. So that's great, and all for a good cause as well, which is, I guess the real motivation and an added bonus behind it. Before I let you go. So relegation playoff incoming against Down.
Yeah.
What's all this been like? Because it looks like it's just looking in from afar, and we're not living it obviously, but it seems like everyone's back training, and suddenly here are these games, and you're 2 games in, and suddenly you're staring down the barrel, and then third game goes by, and oh my God, we could be relegated here. So it's not been ideal. It's been a strange time for you to dip your toe into inter-county management. How has it felt?
It's felt very rushed. Yeah, it has felt very rushed. Now, look, if we had 3 wins instead of 3 losses, I'd probably be telling you it felt lovely. But no, it has felt very rushed. We had 9 players unavailable for selection in our last game versus Kildare due to injury. Now all short-term things, but when you've got such a compressed window. Like nine injuries is significant.
And obviously. Is the injuries are because you went from doing nothing to suddenly back on kind of thing?
Yeah, and I mean, look, we've a guy there who's top of the tree in terms of the physical preparation. So we've done everything we possibly could in terms of managing load and different things, and still fellas have broken down with different niggles and stuff. So it seems like it's kind of inevitable at this stage that you were going to get that. But outside of that, like the performances, we'll say that we've given just haven't been good enough to win us games, to keep out of this situation. So for us going up to Down, no, it's strange that we have to go to Down, I suppose, in one sense that game wouldn't be in a neutral venue, given the fact that maybe they obviously were caught offside with training, but yet have that game at home, which is an interesting little side piece. But in truth, we probably don't have a big issue going up there because you know what, we know what we have to do. We have to perform ourselves. We have to get a win. So whether the game is on in Down or in somewhere else, it doesn't really matter. It's just trying to get a performance for us. And if we win, we'll be in a great position to stay in Division 2 for another year. And if we don't, then we haven't been good enough to stay there.
Yeah, I heard Pádraig Joyce giving out about that as well. I do think, to be fair, that it's had no bearing them not having their home game on them getting a home game now, as in even the game they played away from home, it was still chalked up as a home game. So they didn't benefit from the rule break. But look, I guess people would say, well, the punishment wasn't severe enough, maybe is the point as well. So I was having a look, 10 points against Cork, 12 against Clare, 1-8 against Kildare. So you're kind of pitching in somewhere between 10 and 12 points. And I heard you saying after the game at the weekend, you know, our target is 18, 19 points a game. Putting the ball over the bar, as much as this sport is going to change and evolve, there's a simple kind of endpoint, isn't there? And you got to put the ball over the bar. So break that down for me. What's not happening there? Or what's the root cause of that?
Yeah, look, there's, and I'm probably harping on about it even too much, to be honest. Yeah, right, because the more you talk about it now at this stage, it's only becoming a thing, you know. And like we've good forwards, and we're getting good quality looks, and eventually, like I'm a big believer, if you keep doing the right things in training and you keep doing the right things in the game, eventually, you know, these things will turn, because fellas have the quality, and that's not going to be a big issue. But there's other things that we're not doing well enough, or that we haven't done well enough, that we need to, you know, for like this game for us against Down, you know, while other teams obviously are looking at, you know, a run in the championship and different things, and obviously we'll concern ourselves with that after. This is our All-Ireland final in 2 weeks' time, and we have to, you know, that's going to be one aspect of it, putting the ball over the bar, but obviously doing a little bit better in terms of our defensive side of the game as well. But if you're not getting up to 18 points, Joe, in inter-county football, it's very hard to win games, and that's a big part of it. But you know, it's something that I'm confident enough that, you know, the fellas that we have and the way that we're working, eventually that'll turn around.
Kind of an interesting thing, this inter-county management, in that your instinct, I think, would always to be pretty open and pretty honest where you can. And then you suddenly realize, oh my God, if I'm mentioning the shooting all the time, it's going to become this big thing. I better rein it in a bit. So you're getting to grips with a lot of things at the moment, I would think, and how much you give to the media or what way you frame a game is part of the deal. It is. Oh yeah. And you know what? Like the whole kind of, you know, this whole secrecy and don't talk. Yeah. I know it's probably obvious that I'm not, you know, I've never stopped players doing an interview. I've never told fellas you can't talk to this guy. Like for me, like especially in that side of things, players have to be given an opportunity to show their personality, whether that's on the field or it's, you know, in print or through a media outlet. Like these fellas are mature, educated guys that know their own mind, and once they're not doing anything that's inappropriate, then fellas should be allowed to express themselves and let people know who they are outside of just being a footballer. And I think there's way too much made of the management stuff, to be honest. I think people just kind of, you know, make out that it's a tough gig, obviously, like especially when you're losing games, it's a tough gig because everything closes in on top of you. But, you know, it's just those little side pieces that you're talking about. Like suddenly if we kick, you know, 2 games in a row where we have a lot of chances and we don't take them, and I bring that up, and it's, you know, it's my responsibility obviously to talk about it. And then when I do, then it's an issue, and now everybody's listening to it, and it becomes something that's a focus of the players, and you don't want that, obviously. So I think we can just, you know, get back to focusing on doing as many good things as we can, and once we keep doing that, eventually good things will start to happen, you know. Yeah. So it's this game against Down, which is huge. And then I think in the championship, it's Westmeath on July 4th. So at least a bit of space there to kind of find your bearings again, regardless of what happens against Down, which is good. There's been a lot of talk about, you know, free scoring and football's in a you know, kind of evolving place. I expect things will tighten up again a little bit come championship time. Like, I don't think we've all gone, well, hey, let's just go nuts here. Or what's your read on where the game's at in that respect?
I think the game had started to evolve a couple of years ago, Joe. I think we'd seen kind of peak defensive football, and I think you had started to see the evolution of the game probably even before they brought in this offensive mark. You know, I think the offensive mark was like the whole idea obviously was behind it was to try and promote kicking, and I think maybe while I'm not a huge fan of it, I don't think it has a huge impact in the game. I think it helped in that regard at the start to promote kicking and to say, lads, there is a reward here if we start moving the ball a little bit quicker with our foot. But I think it had started to shift before that, you know, and I think now people are putting more emphasis, or as much emphasis now on you know, like every team now, Joe, I assume has a target of 18 or 19 points like to win a game. Yeah. Whereas before, that was probably, you were saying, if you get to 15, if you get to 14 points here and you keep them to 1-8 or 1-9, now you've a better chance. Whereas now, realistically, like you look at all the scores, if you're not getting to that 18-point mark, you're going to struggle to be successful. And if we're getting, you know, 18, 17, if we're getting 35 points in the game of football, that's a great game. That's really entertaining. And it's, you know, that's what you want to see.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.